Chapter 2634. Great Emperor Heaven Punisher? Taihao Yunqi held the jade slip in his hand, and his expression immediately changed. His gaze was extremely solemn. This news was like a bolt from the blue to him. Back then the dragon-subduing general had wreaked havoc on Shenwu continent, causing blood to rain everywhere. After the southern expedition marshal had arrived, he had swept through the entire continent and almost destroyed the 3 divine kingdoms. In the end, many martial gods had joined forces to defeat the great Emperor Heaven Punisher and chase the southern expedition marshal away. However, martial god Taihao, the emissary of the divine ruins, and fairy Yuqing had all fallen in the great battle. The damage that the great battle had inflicted on Shenwu continent had yet to heal. One could only imagine what kind of shocking waves the great Emperor Heaven Punisher would cause if he personally came to Shenwu continent. Taihao Yunqi had never heard of the great Emperor Heaven Punisher, nor did he know what kind of powerhouse he was. However, he was certain that the great Emperor Heaven Punisher's strength surpassed the southern expedition marshals. According to Divine Lord Tianxing, the southern expedition marshal is a true god powerhouse. The great Emperor Heaven Punisher must be an even stronger true god. This time it's not just the Taihao Divine Kingdom. I'm afraid that the entire Shenwu continent will be destroyed, right? Taihao Yunqi muttered to himself as he silently put the jade slip away. After a while his expression and eyes regained their calm, and he shouted in a dignified tone, "Messenger, order the vice commander of the divine guards to lead 2,000 elites and follow me to the Deqian Empire." The messenger guarding outside the study immediately rushed in and anxiously tried to dissuade him. "Divine Lord, you must not do this. You are the ruler of a divine kingdom and the leader of millions of people. How can you put yourself in danger?" Without waiting for the messenger to finish speaking, Taihao Yunqi's tone was firm as he resolutely said, "There's no need to say anything more. I've already made up my mind. The emperor guards the kingdom and the king dies for the kingdom. If the great storm comes, if the Taihao Divine Kingdom is destroyed, I will face it with the kingdom." Taihao Yunqi's tone was solemn and forceful, and it was filled with an indomitable will that did not fear death. The messenger was also intimidated and he froze in place for a while. It took him a while to regain his composure and quickly bowed before he left to pass down the order. As soon as the messenger left, a girl in a green robe and a pair of small feet walked into the study. The girl was sitting on a half-moon-shaped throne. She was only 4 feet tall and had a small face that looked like it was carved from jade. She was especially cute. After entering the study, the first thing she said was, "Seventh brother, I want to go with you." When Taihao Yunqi saw her, he felt a headache coming on. "Jujio, why did you come here instead of staying in your bedroom?" Without a doubt, that noble and adorable little girl was Jujio. She looked at Taihao Yunqi with a determined gaze and said in a serious tone, "Seventh brother, you don't have to hide it from me. I've already received the news. This is no small matter. I want to go with you." "Nonsense." Taihao Yunqi purposely pulled a long face and scolded sternly, "Why don't you stay in your palace and cultivate in seclusion? What are you doing here?" "I'm going to the Big Dry Empire to investigate the situation. I'll be back in a few days. Stay in the Divine Palace and don't go anywhere. This is an order." Jujio pouted and said stubbornly, "Seventh brother, don't try to lie to me. I know that the person who massacred the citizens of the Big Dry Empire must be a martial god expert. You're the lord of the Divine Kingdom and you're going to investigate personally. Why can't I go? I don't care. I have to go with you on such a dangerous matter." Taihao Yunqi couldn't bear it and used both hard and soft methods to persuade Jujio to stay in the Divine Palace. But Jujio had made up her mind and wouldn't listen to him. Helpless, Taihao Yunqi could only bring Jujio and rush to the Big Dry Empire under the escort of the Divine Guard Vice Commander and 2,000 elites. At the same time, inside the Big Dry Empire in the southeastern Fire Mulberry City. This ancient city with 3,000 years of history was located on a 500-mile plain. The city was surrounded by mountains and the lush mountain range was filled with fiery red fire mulberry trees. In the past 10 years the Fire Mulberry City had been peaceful. The citizens lived and worked in peace and contentment. The martial Dao also began to recover and flourish. However, the peace that lasted for 10 years was broken by a piece of news that came 3 days ago. In the southern region of the Big Dry Empire, more than 20 disasters occurred. More than 20 cities were destroyed one after another. More than 30 million citizens died. Almost no one survived. Moreover, the spread of the disasters seemed to be approaching the Fire Mulberry City. Such terrifying news cast an invisible shadow over the Fire Mulberry City. Over the past 3 days, the people in the city were in a state of panic. Countless martial artists and citizens dragged their families and fled the city at night. In the beginning, many people were still hoping for a fluke. However, as the atmosphere of panic spread, more and more people left their homes and fled. It was already evening. The blood-red sun hung in the sky and was about to fall. However, at the north and south gates of the Fire Mulberry City, there were still a large number of martial artists and citizens lining up to leave the city. No one knew that 2 tall and burly figures were standing in the sky above the Fire Mulberry City. These 2 foreign-race martial artists in golden armor were the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor in disguise. The Imperial Tutor looked at the chaotic Fire Mulberry City and sneered. "Hee, our massacre has already taken effect. Panic is spreading. Soon this continent will descend into chaos." The Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher looked down at the city expressionlessly and said indifferently, "What's the point of these ignorant ants running away now? The entire mainland will fall under this emperor's feet. No matter where they run, only death awaits them." The Imperial Tutor hurriedly nodded in agreement and smiled. "That's right. It's not just the Shenwu continent. The entire 5 Elements realm is your territory. All living beings in this world will become the Great Emperor's slaves." The Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher glanced at the city's citizens and said disdainfully, "Such weak ants don't even have the right to be my slaves." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand and unleashed a purple divine flame that covered the sky. Whoosh! The surging purple divine flame instantly enveloped the sky for hundreds of kilometers, blocking out the blood-red sun. The entire Fire Mulberry City turned a dark purple, and a terrifyingly high temperature filled the air. The noisy city immediately quieted down. Hundreds of thousands of citizens' expressions changed as they looked up at the sky. The next moment, the crowd saw the purple divine flame cover the sky and pour down like a flood. Boom! The city immediately turned into a sea of fire that was drowned by endless divine flames. Many warriors and commoners were burned to ashes before they could regain their senses. Regardless of whether they were in the city or those who had fled outside, they were all buried in the sea of fire and turned to ash. A moment later, the entire city had been reduced to scorched earth, and not a single intact building remained. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher did not want to waste any more time, so he flew away with the Imperial Tutor. But at this moment, a thunderous roar came from behind the 2 of them. "You 2 despicable beasts, don't even think about escaping." Chapter 2635. A sudden roar reverberated in the sky. The Great Emperor Tianfa and the Imperial Tutor, who were about to leave, immediately stopped. The 2 of them turned around and saw a dazzling beam of green light shooting toward them like a bolt of lightning. In the sky behind the cyan light, there were thousands of demon beasts and birds, carrying tens of thousands of armored human warriors. Seeing this, Great Emperor Tianfa and Emperor's Preceptor exchanged glances with each other. Their lips curled into a mocking smile. Swoosh! After a few breaths, the beam of green light flew closer and stopped above the ruins of Wuxia City. The green light receded, revealing a burly man in golden armor and a purple cloak. This man was tall and strong and had a resolute face. He wore a crown on his head and exuded a majestic aura. He was the ruler of the Great Qian Empire, the sacred emperor of the Great Qian Empire. The 4,000 beasts and birds carried 4,600 primordial soul realm martial artists in black armor. They were the imperial guards of the Great Qian Empire. Swoosh! 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 Soon the 4,000 birds arrived behind the sacred emperor of the Great Qian Empire. They spread out and formed a huge circle with a radius of 100 miles, surrounding Great Emperor Fa Tian and the Imperial Preceptor. All the black-armored Imperial guards held swords and spears and pointed their gleaming blades at the 2 of them. Despite being surrounded, the Great Emperor Tianfa and the Imperial Tutor did not change their expressions. The 2 of them even sized up the sacred emperor of the Great Qian Empire with a playful smile and ignored the 4,000 Imperial guards. The sacred emperor of the Great Qian Empire looked down at the ruins of Wuxia City and was instantly enraged. He roared furiously, "You 2 cruel bastards! How dare you start a massacre in the territory of the Great Qian Empire and slaughter my people? I personally led the Imperial Guards and searched for you for 5 days and 5 nights. I finally caught you. Don't try to resist. I will capture you and behead you in public. His voice echoed in the sky, and the sacred emperor of the Great Qian dynasty was filled with grief and indignation. His aura was majestic and domineering. The Emperor of Heaven Punisher did not understand what he was talking about. He asked the Imperial Tutor next to him, Imperial Tutor, you've captured dozens of people and extracted the memories of more than 60 people. You should have mastered the human language, right? The Imperial Tutor smiled and nodded. Not only that, but I've also gained a basic understanding of the situation on Shenwu continent. The heaven-punishing emperor nodded slightly and asked, Who's that guy? What did he just say? The Imperial Tutor couldn't help but chuckle as he explained, The ants we've been killing over the past few days are all citizens of the Deqian Empire. That fellow is the Big Dry Empire Saint Emperor and has been looking for us for several days. He told us not to resist. He wanted to capture us and execute us. Ha! The Imperial Tutor couldn't help but laugh. The great Emperor of Heaven Extermination could not bring himself to smile. He said angrily, We've killed more than 30 million ants and created such a great panic. They've only sent a martial saint? Preposterous. This is the greatest humiliation to me. This is unforgivable. The Imperial Tutor quickly stopped laughing and cupped his hands respectfully. Your Majesty, please calm down. Let me deal with these ants. He then took a few steps forward and looked at the Great Dry Empire Saint Emperor with disdain. He sneered, Little guy, you're just a puny martial saint, yet you dare to stop us? You're like an ant trying to shake a tree, a mantis trying to stop a chariot. I don't want to kill you. Quickly report this to Ji Tianxing and have him come here to accept his death. The Imperial Tutor was speaking the human language. Although it was a little awkward, the Great Dry Empire Saint Emperor could hear him clearly. He was so angry that he started laughing. He pointed his sword at the Imperial Tutor and sneered, A puny martial saint? Ah! You foreign beast, you're really arrogant. Do you think the two of you are worthy of Divine Master Tianxing taking action? Why don't you look in the mirror and see if you're qualified? The Great Dry Empire Saint Emperor was a citizen of the vast divine nation. However, in his heart, Ji Tianxing's position was sacred and could not be blasphemed. The Imperial Tutor was not angry. He sneered and said, the ignorant are really fearless. Even if Ji Tianxing was here, he wouldn't dare to speak so arrogantly. All right, I don't have time to talk to you. Since you've chosen to die, I'll fulfill your wish. The Imperial Tutor formed a seal with his hands and a purple light shot up into the sky. Swoosh! A dazzling purple halo shot out from his body and spread in all directions. Buzz! That purple halo contained a powerful divine power, and it instantly spread across a radius of 200 miles, sweeping across the sky. More than 4,000 demonic beasts, birds, and 4,600 Imperial Guards were all swept up by the purple halo. Bam! 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 In the next moment, all the demonic beasts, birds, and Imperial Guards exploded into a rain of blood with a series of muffled sounds. Blood and pieces of corpses poured down from the sky and scattered in the ruins below. In the blink of an eye, the sky became empty. Apart from the great Emperor of Heaven Slayer and the Imperial Tutor, only the Great Dry Empire Saint Emperor was left. Such a strange and terrifying scene instantly made the Great Dry Empire Saint Emperor's body shake violently and his eyes widened in shock. In the depths of his eyes there was deep shock and fear. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed that it was real. There's such a terrifying expert in the world? Who is he? His strength? Has he already reached the martial god realm? The Great Dry Empire Saint Emperor's body trembled as these thoughts flashed across his mind and he felt a chill down his spine. He finally understood how powerful the two alien races he was facing were. I'm dead. The Great Dry Empire Saint Emperor felt a chill down his spine, and that was the only thought left in his mind. At this moment, the Imperial Tutor looked at him with a cold smile and said again, Young man, I'll say it one last time. Immediately send a message to Ji Tianxing and ask him to come and accept his death. Otherwise, you know the consequences. The eerie voice contained a terrifying deterrent force, and it lingered in the ears of the Great Dry Empire Saint Emperor. The Great Dry Empire Saint Emperor's face turned pale and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. I. He felt his throat tighten and said with a dry voice, but I can't contact Master God Tianxing at all. Given my identity and status, I don't have the right to contact him. Hearing these words, the sneer on the Imperial Preceptor's face disappeared, revealing a look of disappointment. In that case, there's no need for you to exist, the Imperial Preceptor said in an indifferent tone. He flicked out a ray of purple divine light with his finger. Swoosh. In just an instant, the purple divine light flashed across the sky like lightning and pierced the Great Dry Empire Saint Emperor's chest. The Great Dry Empire did not have time to dodge or react. Bam! As a muffled sound was heard, the purple divine light exploded in his body and turned into purple flames that soared into the sky. His tall and sturdy body was also blasted into pieces, causing a rain of blood to splatter all over the sky. A martial saint had been instantly killed by Imperial Tutor Fa Tian with a single finger. Chapter 2636. Sigh, what a disappointment. The Imperial Tutor sighed when the great Qian Emperor's flesh and blood fell on the ruins. He shook his head and returned to the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher's side. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher asked expressionlessly, "How was it?" The Imperial Tutor shook his head and said dejectedly, "This guy is a citizen of the vast divine kingdom. He is not Ji Tianxing's subordinate. Also, his status is too low. He has no right to contact Ji Tianxing." The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher said without hesitation, "In that case, let's go to Ji Tianxing's divine kingdom and force him to show himself." The Imperial Tutor thought for a while and shook his head again. Ji Tianxing's territory is the Tianxing's divine kingdom. It is very far from here. Also, Ji Tianxing is only the divine lord in name. He has not been involved in political affairs for many years and has not shown himself. We have already created chaos and panic here. The news will soon reach Ji Tianxing. He should be here soon. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher did not say anything else. He said in a low voice, "Then let's continue the massacre." "Yes, Your Majesty." The Imperial Tutor cupped his hands and bowed. Then the two turned and flew away. They continued to advance toward the north. However, the two had only flown 1,000 li away when they were stopped by a huge group of cultivators. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. It was a team shining with golden light. They streaked across the sky like lightning and stopped in front of the two. There were more than 2,000 martial artists. They were all riding on disc-shaped flying Dharma treasures. They wore silver armor and had swords and sabers hanging from their waists. Most of the silver-armored guards were at the second or third level of the Tribulation realm. The two people in the lead were a young man in a golden robe and a divine crown. The other was a petite and cute girl. The young man in the golden robe was very dignified. The cute girl was 4 feet tall. She had a head of golden hair and a pair of big eyes. She was unforgettable. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher glanced at them and said expressionlessly, "Another bunch of ants who don't know what's good for them." The Imperial Tutor smiled and said, "Your Majesty, please be patient and allow me to deal with them." After he finished speaking, he took a few steps forward and looked at the young man in gold with disdain. He said, "Little guy, tell me your name. Let's see if you have the right to speak to me." The Imperial Tutor could tell that the golden-robed young man and the little girl were both martial sages. If the other party's identity was the same as the sacred emperor of the Great Qian dynasty, he wouldn't waste his breath and would just kill him. The golden-robed young man and little girl were none other than Taihao Yunqi and Zhou Xian. At this moment, both of them were frowning as they sized up the Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor. Strange. Divine Lord Yunyao told me that the intruder might be the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. Those two are clearly foreign race experts. They have nothing to do with the Heaven Punishing race. Taihao Yunqi muttered in his heart. However, he did not let his guard down. Regardless of whether the intruder was from the Heaven Punisher race or not, they were not to be trifled with. Zhou Xian did not know the crux of the problem. She stared sharply at the Imperial Tutor and shouted angrily, "Who are you? Why did you barge into the vast divine kingdom? Did you have something to do with the battle that happened in Wuxia City?" The Imperial Tutor glanced at her and nodded with a playful smile. "That's right. Wuxia City has been reduced to ruins. We did it. Not only did we destroy Wuxia City, but we also destroyed dozens of cities along the way. Little girl, you are unlucky to have met us today. If you answer my questions honestly, you can still have a quick death." Otherwise, I will make you suffer so much that you will regret ever being born. When Taihao Yunqi and Zhu heard this, their faces changed and killing intent surged in their eyes. You are the culprits who massacred 30 million people. Damn you foreign race bastards. The vast divine kingdom has no enmity with you. Why are you so ruthless? The imperial tutor frowned in displeasure. He flicked his finger and 2 rays of purple divine light shot out. Swoosh, swoosh. The divine light was like a sword and instantly pierced through the left arms of Taihao Yunqi and Zhu. With a boom, the left arms of the two exploded at the same time and turned into a bloody mist that drifted into the sky. The intense pain caused the two to groan at the same time. Both brother and sister were overwhelmed with shock and anger. They could not believe that the intruder had easily destroyed their left arms with a flick of his finger. With their martial sage realm strength, they were unable to dodge or defend themselves. The intruder's strength must have reached the martial god realm. The imperial tutor sneered. You two brats, you have not answered my question. If you delay any longer, I will lose my patience. You are courting death. Zhu was furious. She instinctively drew her sword and was about to attack. Zhu no. Taihao Yunqi could still maintain his calm and quickly stopped her. He endured the pain of losing his left arm and looked at the imperial tutor with a dark face. I am the king of the vast divine kingdom. She is my little sister. Who are you? Why did you kill my people? The imperial tutor smiled in satisfaction after hearing Taihao Yunqi's answer. The king of the vast divine kingdom? Very good. You came at the right time, ha. After laughing, the imperial tutor said in a pleasant tone, although you are as weak as an ant, you are the king of the vast divine kingdom. You should know Ji Tianxing. I will give you a chance to live. Send a message to Ji Tianxing now and beg him to save you. I will spare your lives. Taihao Yunqi and Zhu were stunned when they heard this. Send a message to Divine Lord Tianxing? Are you here for Tianxing? Who are you? Why do you want to find Ji Tianxing? The imperial tutor said without changing his expression, you ask too many questions. Your lives are in my hands now. You have no other choice. Send a message to Ji Tianxing and ask him to come or die. As he spoke, the imperial tutor formed a seal with his hands and released 2 rings of dazzling purple divine light. Buzz. The purple divine light spread out like ripples and covered a radius of a few hundred miles. The 2,000 divine guards in silver armor and armed with sabers and swords were hit by the purple divine light before they could react. Bam, 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 bam. A series of muffled sounds echoed in the sky. The 2,000 elite divine guards exploded into a bloody mist in an instant. Not even their bones were left. A rain of blood mixed with the remains of the corpses fell from the sky like a bloody rainstorm. In the blink of an eye, only the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher, the imperial tutor Taihao Yunqi and Zhu were left in the sky. This scene made Taihao Yunqi and Zhu tremble violently. Their eyes widened in shock. They were incomparably terrified and furious. At the same time, a strong sense of powerlessness arose in their hearts. The strength of the imperial preceptor was terrifyingly powerful to an unfathomable extent, causing them to completely lose the thought of resisting. Chapter 2637. Taihao Yunqi and Zhu felt a chill run down their spines. Fear and despair spread from their hearts to their entire bodies. They had no doubt that the imperial tutor could kill them with a snap of his fingers. But, even so, the two of them did not surrender. Taihao Yunqi took a deep breath and tried his best to remain calm. He said calmly, I have to admit that you are indeed very powerful. But you have yet to tell me your true identity and intentions. The imperial tutor raised an eyebrow and sneered mockingly. Kid, you dare to negotiate with me? Looks like you don't want to live anymore. Taihao Yunqi said calmly, what's there to be afraid of? If you don't answer me truthfully, then just kill me. As he spoke, Taihao Yunqi walked towards the imperial preceptor at a moderate pace. The imperial tutor's smile became even more playful. Interesting. I haven't seen someone as fearless as you in a long time. Looks like you have a close relationship with Ji Tianxing. You want to protect him, don't you? Taihao Yunqi did not answer and continued walking toward the imperial tutor. They were originally 10 miles apart, but the distance between them was shortening. The imperial tutor smiled confidently and said, Kid, although you are not afraid of death, you are too ignorant. You can't imagine how terrifying a true god can be. Now that you have met me, your life is not up to you. If I want you to die, you won't be able to live. If I want you to die, you won't be able to die. A true god expert? Taihao Yunqi stopped in his tracks and frowned. A glint flashed across his eyes. I understand now. You are the great Emperor Tianf. You used the transformation divine power to disguise yourself as a member of the mutated tribe. Taihao Yunqi was still confused. How could the great Emperor Tianfa that Yun Yao mentioned be two mutated tribe elites? Now he finally understood. The imperial tutor frowned and was obviously stunned. Soon after he grinned and sneered, "Hee hee boy, it seems like you know a lot of things. Since that's the case, I can't keep you." The imperial tutor was running out of patience. After all, great Emperor Tianfa was watching them from behind. He had already been delayed for so long without any results. He was already ashamed. He decided to capture Taihao Yunqi and use a secret technique to plunder his soul and memories. At that time he would be able to easily obtain information about Ji Tianxing. "Kneel before me," the imperial tutor bellowed in anger, releasing an invisible aura. Formless soul suppressing divine power instantly burst forth, enveloping towards Taihao Yunqi. Taihao Yunqi sensed that something was amiss and immediately tried to teleport away. But his speed was too slow. How could a mere martial sage escape the suppression of a true god? Buzz. Taihao Yunqi only felt a rumble in his mind before his consciousness was knocked out. His body stiffened and he lost consciousness. Under the suppression of the imperial tutor, his body gradually bent and his knees bent. Then he knelt down. Seeing this, Jujia was so angry that her eyes almost popped out of their sockets. "Bastard! Let go of my seventh brother." She let out a furious roar as she brandished her sword and slashed out dozens of sword lights, charging towards the imperial preceptor without any regard for her own safety. However, the imperial tutor did not even bother to attack. He suddenly turned his head and looked at Jujia with a sharp gaze. He released a formless pressure of divine power. Crack, crack. The dozens of five-colored sword radiances were instantly shattered and scattered in the sky. Jujia was also engulfed by the suppression. Her face turned as pale as a sheet of paper. She spat out a mouthful of blood and flew back in a daze. The imperial tutor did not kill her directly. He purposely spared her life. After plundering Taihao Yunqi's soul and memories, he would slowly interrogate Jujia. Zhoush. The imperial tutor reached out his right hand and unleashed a giant purple claw toward the unconscious Taihao Yunqi. The giant purple claw descended from the sky and was about to grab Taihao Yunqi. At this critical moment, a dazzling crimson spear shadow suddenly attacked from the horizon. What followed was a clear and melodious cry. "Damn you, heavenly dog! Die!" Bam! The red spear shadow that was hundreds of feet long hit the giant purple claw with the red divine fire that could burn everything. There was an earth-shattering explosion. The violent impact sent the imperial tutor flying 100 feet away. He retreated behind the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. His expression changed drastically as he looked behind him coldly. He saw an icy blue and a crimson red flowing light, which was as fast as the aurora, rushing towards him. Zhoosh, zhoosh. In the blink of an eye, the two streaks of light flew to Taihao Yunqi's side and stopped. After the light faded, two beautiful figures appeared. They were two young women with peerless beauty and peerless elegance. One of them was wearing a long white dress. She was as beautiful as a fairy and had a noble and elegant aura. She held two pitch-black divine swords in her hands. The other one was wearing a long red dress. She had a perfect figure and a hot aura. She held a black divine spear that was more than 10 feet long. There was no doubt that they were Yun Yao and Jiku. Martial Emperor Tianjia and the Emperor's preceptor looked at the two of them in astonishment. Of course, what surprised them was not Yun Yao and Jiku's unparalleled beauty. Instead, they were both at LV3 True Immortal Realm. The divine weapons in their hands were also made of boundless divine stone. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor looked at each other and smiled at the same time. The main characters are here. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor could guess that the boundless divine stone was the reason why 3 True Immortal Realm experts had appeared in this small world of 5 elements. The two beautiful young women must have a close relationship with Ji Tianxing. As long as they could capture the two of them, they could force Ji Tianxing to show himself. They could even interrogate the whereabouts of the boundless divine stone. At that thought, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor were filled with anticipation. They smiled proudly. As for Taihao Yunqi and Zhu, they were just small fries. They were no longer important. At that moment, Yun Yao waved her hand and shot out a gentle silver light into Taihao Yunqi's body. Taihao Yunqi coughed violently and spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Then he regained consciousness. When he looked up and saw Yun Yao and Jiku, his face was filled with anxiety. He said anxiously, "Two divine masters, you must be careful. Those two are true immortal realm experts. They are from the Heaven Punisher tribe and they are here for Divine Master Tianxing." At such a critical moment, Taihao Yunqi was not worried about his own situation. Instead he was worried about Ji Tianxing. This made Yun Yao's heart feel warm. She nodded and said, "Seventh Divine Son, you don't have to say anything. We already know. Let us deal with those two bastards from the Heaven Punisher tribe. You and Zhu should leave this place quickly." To protect Taihao Yunqi and Zhu's dignity, Yun Yao did not say anything. Taihao Yunqi and Zhu both knew that they were too weak to participate in this battle. Chapter 2638. Taihao Yunqi and Zhu would not be of any use if they stayed behind. Instead they would only cause trouble for Yun Yao and Jiku. Seeing that a great battle was about to break out, the siblings hurriedly retreated into the distance. Before they left, they did not forget to warn Yun Yao and Jiku. "Divine Lord Yun Yao, you must be careful. Don't fight them head-on. If you really can't do it, then try to stall them. When Divine Lord Tianxing arrives, he will definitely be able to defeat them." The siblings were not clear about Yun Yao and Jiku's cultivation realms. They only knew that Ji Tianxing was the strongest and had never been defeated before. As they retreated, Yun Yao did not forget to send a message to her brother. "Seventh Godchild, immediately issue an order for the citizens of the surrounding cities to evacuate to avoid unnecessary casualties. We will try to stall them and try our best to lure them away." Besides that, Yun Yao did not say anything else, nor did she mention Ji Tianxing. Taihao Yunqi was a meticulous person, and he immediately understood what Yun Yao meant and guessed the crux of the problem. "Divine Lord Yun Yao wants me to issue an order for the citizens of the surrounding cities to evacuate?" Could it be that Divine Lord Yun Yao already knew the outcome of the battle before it even began? That the two of them would not be able to defeat Great Emperor Heaven Punisher? Furthermore, she did not mention Divine Lord Tianxing at all. Why hasn't Divine Lord Tianxing appeared? Is he not in Shenwu continent? Taihao Yunqi frowned at this thought and his expression became solemn. He had a premonition that an even more terrifying disaster was about to befall the vast divine kingdom. However, he was not strong enough to stop all of this. All he could do was quickly flee with Zhu. After that, he would issue an order for the citizens of the surrounding cities to evacuate as quickly as possible. When they saw Taihao Yunqi and Zhu flee, Great Emperor Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor did not try to stop them. The Imperial Tutor sneered as he looked at Yun Yao and Jiku. "The unimportant people have already left. Now it's time for you to answer my questions. What is your relationship with Ji Tianxing? Where is Ji Tianxing?" Yun Yao pointed her twin swords at the Imperial Preceptor and shouted coldly with disdain, "A coward who hides his head but shows his tail. He doesn't even dare to show his true face. What qualifications do you have to ask me? If I'm not mistaken, you're just a lackey of Great Emperor Tianfei." As she spoke, she slowly moved her swords and pointed them at Great Emperor Tianfei. She sneered, "You are the real Great Emperor Tianfei." Even though Great Emperor Tianfei and Emperor's Preceptor had disguised themselves as alien races, they could not escape Yun Yao's detection. She could sense that the Imperial Preceptor's aura was slightly weaker than the Great Emperor Tianfei's. Moreover, Great Emperor Heaven Punisher's aura was extraordinary. He looked on expressionlessly. It was obvious that he was the leader. Under normal circumstances, those who challenged Great Emperor Heaven Punisher were his lackeys. Yun Yao's guess was right. The Imperial Preceptor furrowed his brows and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Great Emperor Heaven Punisher did not remain silent. He walked up to the Imperial Tutor and stood still. Purple light flashed from his body, and he revealed his true form. Zhou. A 3-foot-tall man with the upper body of a human and the lower body of a dragon horse appeared in the sky. He wore the 9 heavens limitless crimson gold crown on his head and a large golden cloak draped over his shoulders. His long purple hair fluttered in the wind. Although he was only standing in the sky and did not do anything, his aura was powerful. However, a majestic and mighty aura that could suppress the heavens and the earth naturally emanated from his body. Lowly human, you're very smart. That's right. I'm Great Emperor Heaven Punisher. Emperor Tianvis stared at Yunyao sternly and shouted in a booming voice. Since you know who I am, you should know that my methods are not something you can handle. Don't make any more pointless resistance. Tell Ji Tianxing to come out. My target is him. If you don't want to die, send him a message. Since Great Emperor Heaven Punisher had revealed his true form, there was no need for the Imperial Tutor to hide. Swoosh. Purple light flashed. The Imperial Tutor returned to his original form. He was a Great Emperor Heaven Punisher with the upper body of a human and the lower body of a leopard. His entire body was light purple and covered in spots. He gave off a fierce aura. He stood behind Great Emperor Heaven Punisher and held a black sword that was as wide as a bench. He locked onto Yunyao and Jiku with a murderous aura. Wherever Great Emperor Heaven Punisher goes, all worlds will submit to him. Worms of the human race, you only have two choices. Submit to me or die. Yunyao and Jiku stared coldly at Great Emperor Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor. They memorized their appearances and auras. Jiku cast a spell with her left hand and held the Origin Stone Divine Spear in her right hand. She pointed at the Imperial Tutor and shouted, "Lowly bastard, you want to find Brother Tianxing? Then you'll have to get past us first. I don't care how powerful the Great Emperor Heaven Punisher is or how many worlds you've conquered. All I know is that the world of 5 elements will be your burial ground." Although she was a woman, Jiku's boldness and domineering aura were not inferior to that of a man. Brother Tianxing? Imperial Preceptor raised his eyebrows, the corners of his mouth curled into a sinister sneer. He turned to look at Great Emperor Heaven Punisher and said, "Your Majesty, I'm sure that these 2 women are very close to Ji Tianxing. Take them down and we'll be able to find Ji Tianxing's hiding place." Great Emperor Heaven Punisher smiled coldly and said, "Then what are we waiting for? Take them down." As soon as he finished speaking, Great Emperor Heaven Punisher led the charge toward Yunyao. In a flash, he teleported in front of Yunyao and swung his fist at her. Yunyao instinctively raised her swords and blocked in front of her. Bam! With a muffled sound, Yunyao was sent flying by Great Emperor Heaven Punisher's punch. She turned pale from the sudden attack and spat out a mouthful of blood. She only managed to stop after flying for 50 miles. Eldest senior sister. Jiku immediately let out a cry of surprise, revealing a look of deep worry. She had not expected Great Emperor Heaven Punisher to be so powerful. Yunyao was no match for him at all. She had been sent flying with just one blow. The gap between their strength was too big. Jiku instinctively waved her spear and tried to stab it toward Great Emperor Heaven Punisher to save Yunyao. However, at this moment the Imperial Tutor also struck. "Babe, your opponent is me," the Imperial Preceptor shouted in a low voice, full of confidence. He waved his black broadsword, which was more than 10 feet long, and slashed at Jiku with all his might. Swoosh! Swoosh! 3 dazzling purple swords slashed down toward Jiku's head with the power to annihilate everything in their path. At this critical moment, Jiku held the Dawn Stone Divine Spear tightly without hesitation and swung it with all her might. Boom! Boom boom! The Dawn Stone Divine Spear collided with the 3 purple sword radiances and created a series of earth-shattering sounds. The purple sword radiances shattered into countless purple light shards and scattered in the sky. The Dawn Stone Divine Spear buzzed from the impact. It was lifted up high and almost flew out of Jiku's hand. The violent impact shook Jiku and sent her flying, and she landed 30 miles away. She had just neutralized the impact and was about to counterattack when the Imperial Tutor swung his sword toward her again. At the same time, Great Emperor Heaven Punisher teleported in front of Yunyao and swung his palm at her again. Chapter 2639. The Emperor of Heaven's Slayer's attack was simple. He didn't use any weapons. He only used his fists and legs to attack, but they were still powerful enough to destroy the world. When he struck with his palm, a palm shadow as large as a mountain slashed down like a giant blade toward Yunyao's head. It was such a simple attack. There was nothing fancy about it. He just used his strength and speed to the maximum. However, Yunyao felt immense pressure under the palm shadow. Even her divine soul was locked on too. There was nowhere for her to run. At this critical moment she had to use all her strength to perform her most powerful trump card. A cold light covers the heavens and earth, 2 sleeves dazzle the starry sky. She shouted. She waved her 2 dawn stone divine swords and slashed out 2 starry swords that were thousands of feet long. Boom. Crack. The 2 starry swords hit the purple palm shadow from the left and right. There was an earth-shattering explosion. A loud explosion shook the heavens, spreading over a radius of 10,000 miles, shaking the clouds. The starry swords and the purple palm shadow shattered at the same time. They turned into light shards that blotted out the sky and scattered in all directions. A shockwave that could destroy heaven and earth erupted with a loud bang, blasting Yunyao back 30 miles. The Emperor of Heaven's Slayer only swayed a little. He didn't even take a step back. Such a scene caused Yunyao's eyes to widen in shock. She revealed an incomparably shocked expression. How is this possible? How can he be so powerful? I used all my strength to perform my sword technique, but it was nullified by his casual attack? Yunyao wouldn't have believed it if she hadn't seen it with her own eyes. She was a LV3 true immortal after all. She was talented and had a noble bloodline. She had mastered an earth-shattering primordial divine skill. Her combat strength was outstanding. She might not lose even if she fought against a LV6 true immortal. Now she finally understood. No wonder Ji Tianqing had escaped with serious injuries when he fought the Emperor of Heaven's Slayer. She was sure that the Emperor of Heaven's Slayer had reached the peak of the true immortal realm. Just as Ji Tianqing had said, he was half a step to the heaven god realm. No, I can't fight him head-on. I can only try to deal with him. Yunyao soon calmed down and decided to change her strategy. She didn't want to confront the Emperor of Heaven extermination head-on. At the same time, the great Emperor of Heaven's Slayer frowned and his face was filled with astonishment. He stared at Yunyao with a burning gaze and muttered to himself, I didn't expect that this woman's strength is also the same as Ji Tianqing's. She has reached the 3rd level of the true god realm. Moreover, her bloodline talent was extraordinary, and her battle prowess far surpassed that of ordinary true gods. The tiny 5 elements world actually contains such a shocking secret. It really makes one look forward to it. The Emperor of Heaven extermination sneered. He charged at Yunyao again and attacked with his palm. Yunyao no longer retaliated and hurriedly teleported away. Chua. With a flash of white light, her figure instantly disappeared and teleported to the sky 200 miles away. Trying to escape? How naive. Emperor Tian Fa sneered disdainfully and chased after him again. Moreover, he released an invisible divine power that covered a radius of 1,000 miles and locked onto Yunyao's aura. The invisible pressure instantly suppressed Yunyao and made it difficult for her to move. Her speed became extremely slow. In a short while, the Emperor of Heaven extermination caught up with her and used both his fists and legs to attack her. Yunyao had nowhere to hide. She could only wield her 2 swords and perform her sword skills. Power of heaven and earth, sun and moon. Yin and yang, 5 elements, heaven and earth, reincarnation. Great heaven and earth sword. She shouted loudly and waved the dawn stone divine sword with both hands. She slashed out with the most dazzling sword. Boom. The shocking giant sword slashed through the sky. It contained a power that could turn the universe upside down and shake the heavens and earth. It shattered the purple light in the sky. The mountain-sized palm shadows and fist radiance were shattered into pieces of purple light and scattered in all directions. The violent impact sent Yunyao flying. She spat out a mouthful of blood and flew 100 miles away. Emperor Tian Fa was not injured at all. He broke through the light pieces and shockwaves and continued to charge toward Yunyao. On the other side, in the sky 1,000 miles away, Ji Ku and the Imperial Tutor were also fighting fiercely. The mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. Heavenly flames flew everywhere. The Imperial Tutor relied on his strength and cultivation level to attack aggressively. He waved his broadsword and created a sky full of purple light blades that drowned Ji Ku. Unfortunately, Ji Ku had mastered the 4 divine flames and inherited the divine Tao of the divine bird phoenix. Her strength and style were also very violent. She used the divine flames to protect her body and a pair of dark red wings appeared on her back. She held the dawn stone divine spear with both hands and charged forward valiantly. In the face of the purple light blades that blotted out the sky, she was not afraid at all. She stabbed and swept with her spear. Her spear skills were flawless. Bam, 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 bam. Dozens of flaming spear auras collided with the purple light blades. A series of muffled sounds echoed in the sky. The spear auras and the light blades collapsed at the same time. Dazzling sparks bloomed in the sky. It was as if flames were falling from the sky. In just a few seconds, the two of them had exchanged more than 500 moves. The Imperial Tutor was shocked. He could not believe that he could not injure Jiku. Although he was more powerful than Jiku and had the initiative to attack, he still had the upper hand. On the surface, he did indeed have the upper hand, beating Jiku until she was forced to retreat. However, all of his divine spells were neutralized by Jiku. Jiku's defense was watertight. She attacked and retreated in an orderly manner. She did not panic at all. She even used her divine spells and attacked and retreated in a well-organized manner. She was extremely experienced in battle. Even though she was weaker, she could accurately avoid her weaknesses. She was on par with the Imperial Tutor. This shocked the Imperial Tutor. He even had the illusion that he was not facing a low-level true god. Instead, he was facing a high-level true god who had been through thousands of battles. It was a strange feeling. What the Imperial Tutor did not know was that Jiku was once a Lord God powerhouse from the upper realm. Back then, Mingyu followed Kenshin and fought everywhere. She spent her life in battle and killed countless gods. In terms of combat experience, even 100 Imperial Preceptors added together would not be able to compare with Jiku. However, Jiku was only a level 3 true god. That was why she was able to fight the Imperial Tutor to a draw. If she had reached level 4 true god, she would be able to defeat the Imperial Tutor in no time with her rich battle experience. As time passed, the Imperial Tutor became more and more frightened. He wanted to end the battle quickly, but he did not expect to fight to a draw with Jiku. It was difficult to determine the winner. Moreover, Jiku's divine power was strong and continuous. She did not show any signs of weakening even after exchanging tens of thousands of blows. What made the Imperial Tutor even more uneasy was that he was gradually losing the initiative. He could no longer suppress Jiku. Instead, he was being restrained by Jiku. After fighting for an hour, he was led by Jiku and moved tens of thousands of miles to the east. The Imperial Tutor became more and more anxious. He finally could not help but use his ultimate move. 5 dragons fighting the heavens. The Imperial Tutor roared in a powerful tone. His body emitted a dazzling purple light and ignited a divine flame that soared into the sky. The surging purple divine flame formed 5 ferocious divine dragons, releasing an aura that could destroy heaven and earth. Chapter 2640. Kill. Following the Imperial Preceptor's roar, 5 purple divine dragons bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they descended from the sky towards Jiku. Before the divine dragons arrived, the invisible divine power had already locked onto Jiku. She had difficulty moving and she could not teleport to dodge. At this critical moment, she could only wave her Origin Stone Divine Spear and use her trump card. Nirvana Flame. She shouted with a serious expression. Endless Nirvana Flame burst out of her body and infused it into the Origin Stone Divine Spear. She held the Origin Stone Divine Spear tightly with both hands and stabbed it toward the sky with all her might. Instantly, the Origin Stone Divine Spear shot out 5 dazzling pillars of divine fire. Boom. Crack. The 5 pillars of Nirvana Flame hit the 5 purple divine dragons, creating a loud explosion that shook the sky. In an instant, the purple light dragon and the pillar of divine fire disintegrated, turning into light shards that covered the sky and the earth, scattering in the sky. The destructive shockwave, wrapped in the Nirvana Flame that could burn everything, swept across a radius of 3,000 miles. Instantly, the mountains and forests within 3,000 miles were burned into charred earth and ashes, turning into ruins. Jiku and the Imperial Tutor were also sent flying. Both of them looked pained as blood flowed out of their orifices. They flew hundreds of miles and crashed into the ruins. Bam! Bam! 2 huge craters appeared on the pitch-black, scorched earth and rubble splashed everywhere. The Imperial Preceptor ended up with an ashen face. He coughed violently and spat out a few mouthfuls of blood before he crawled out of the ruins. Damn that B*TC. She is not as powerful as me. How could she injure me? What kind of divine fire is that? How could it be so terrifying? The Imperial Tutor was shocked and furious. At the same time he felt deeply humiliated. The imperial tutor of the Heaven Punisher race had been injured by a nameless human girl. If news of this spread he would lose face. No. I must kill that B***tch today. If I can't even deal with her, how am I going to answer to the great emperor? The imperial tutor discarded all the distracting thoughts in his mind, leaving only this one thought. He circulated his internal energy to suppress his injuries and regained his composure. Then he charged toward Jiku with a murderous aura. At this time, Jiku had already left the ruins. He transformed into a golden divine light and fled towards the east. Swish. The reason she ran away was not because she was afraid of the imperial tutor's strength. In fact, if she were to fight recklessly she would definitely be able to defeat the imperial tutor. But she didn't do it. This was because she was worried about Yun Yao's safety. She knew that Yun Yao was no match for the Heaven Punisher. At this moment, Yun Yao was being chased by the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. She had already fled tens of thousands of miles to the east. She could not afford to waste her time on the imperial tutor. She had to help Yun Yao deal with the Emperor of Heaven extermination. Shua. Jiku was filled with worry. She flew across the sky and headed towards the east. 200 miles behind her, the imperial tutor also came to his senses. He roared angrily and started to chase after her. Bitch, don't even think about escaping. No matter where you go, I will take your life. However, Jiku turned a deaf ear to the imperial tutor's words. She did not even bother to listen to him. She used the power of the Source Stone Divine Spear to increase her speed to the maximum. She swept across the sky like an aurora. In a short while the imperial tutor was thousands of miles away from her. The imperial tutor was embarrassed and angry. He quickly took out his divine battleship and chased after her. At the same time, in a vast mountain range 30,000 miles away, Yun Yao transformed into a ray of starlight and sped across the sky. She was already heavily injured. Her moon-white dress had long been tattered and covered in blood. Her hair was already crooked and her waist-length hair was also in a mess. Her injuries were very serious. Her pretty face was covered in a bloody mist, and blood was still flowing out from the corner of her mouth. Even her divine power was rapidly depleting and her strength was weakening. Her internal organs were in excruciating pain, and her mind was also very tired. However, she pursed her lips tightly and endured her injuries as she continued to speed towards the east. She had already planned to lure the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher out of the vast divine nation and into the 100,000 Mountains. The 100,000 Mountains was a mountain range with a radius of a few million miles. It was located at the intersection of the three divine nations. It was a desolate place with a harsh environment. Only by luring the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher there could she prevent innocent people from dying. However, she was still a million miles away from the 100,000 Mountains. Even if she kept teleporting, it would still take her 3 days to reach there. Thinking of this, she felt a strong sense of helplessness in her heart. She was worried that she would not be able to reach the 100,000 Mountains in her current state. 200 miles behind her, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher was still hot on her heels. His posture was confident and calm. With his hands behind his back he crossed 100 miles with each step. His figure kept flashing in the sky. Moreover, he had exchanged a few thousand blows with Yun Yao, but there was not a single wound on his body. Even his divine power had not been depleted much. He was still in peak condition. In his eyes, Yun Yao was definitely going to die. There was no way that she could escape. He did not use his ultimate move to kill Yun Yao because he wanted to force Yun Yao into a corner and see if she would ask Ji Tianxing for help. Soon 3 days had passed. During these 3 days the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher had caught up to Yun Yao 7 times. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher had attacked Yun Yao 7 times with his divine skill, leaving her covered in wounds. She was covered in wounds and bleeding profusely. Even her white dress was soaked. After being severely injured, her divine power was greatly weakened, and her divine soul was severely damaged. She only had 40% of her strength left. She was at the end of her tether and could not resist the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher's attacks. When the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher caught up to her 7 times, she was almost killed by him. At the most critical moment, Jiku had caught up to her and blocked the fatal blow for her. As a result, Jiku was also severely injured by the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. His life was in danger. Fortunately, the two of them had finally escaped from the vast divine nation and entered the 100,000 mountains. There were endless mountain ranges in all directions, and as far as the eye could see, there were towering peaks that reached into the clouds. Yun Yao and Jiku heaved a sigh of relief. However, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher suddenly sped up and caught up to them. "It's time for you to die. This mountain range will be your burial ground." The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher shouted emotionlessly. He raised his fists and threw out two fist radiances that were as big as mountains toward Yun Yao and Jiku. Whoosh, whoosh. The purple fist radiance that was tens of thousands of feet wide tore through the air and reached Yun Yao and Jiku. The two of them were covered in blood. They were weak and could not resist the attack. They were about to be hit by the purple fist radiance and be smashed into pieces. At this critical moment, Yun Yao and Jiku did not panic. They were still calm. The two of them looked at each other and reached out to hold each other's hands. Yun Yao used her divine sense to send a message and said helplessly, "Cuckoo, our mission is complete. We can only lead them here." "Yes. We are both severely injured. We can only retreat first and think of a countermeasure," Jiku replied. Then she was about to use a secret technique to communicate with the Jutian 10 Absolutes Tower in the ruins of God. With just a thought, she could bring Yun Yao back to the divine pagoda in an instant. However, at this moment the 100,000 mountains suddenly changed. Chapter 2641. In the core region of the five elemental world. Sui Meng. Calm within the golden sphere of light, Ji Tianxing was still lying on the golden mountain. Ever since he released the God King's blood and performed the blood sacrifice, he had been unconscious. He didn't know how long he had been unconscious. It could be 3 to 5 days, 3 to 5 months, or 3 to 5 years. Back then he had lost 70% of his god blood, his flame of life had almost been extinguished, and his god body had almost been shattered. He was on the verge of death. But while he was unconscious, his god blood had turned into tens of thousands of blood droplets and seeped into the golden mountain, quietly refining countless world veins. Using his god blood as a bridge, he established a bloodline connection with the five elemental world. His life and god soul were closely connected to the five elemental world. They lived and died together. Naturally, the golden mountain also released a vast amount of world energy to nourish him. His flame of life reignited, his strength and lifespan began to increase, and his injuries quickly healed. After all, he was one with the five elemental world. If he died, the five elemental world would also fall apart and shatter. Similarly, if the five elemental world was destroyed, his life would also come to an end and he would die. Such a miraculous and special symbiotic relationship was very rare in the myriad worlds. But in the God realm, such a thing was not rare. Because in the God realm, there were many powerful beings who would also refine a star and treat it as their natal star. Especially those gods who cultivated the Tao of faith. Most of them would think of ways to refine a natal star. They would settle billions of living beings on their natal stars, making countless living beings worship them. The stronger the living beings were, the stronger the power of faith they gathered. So, in order to increase their strength, those gods would promote the reproduction of living beings, helping billions of living beings to gain intelligence and cultivate the martial Tao. Ji Tianxing's current situation was somewhat similar to those gods. However, he didn't cultivate the Tao of faith, so he couldn't absorb powerful energy from the living beings of the five elemental world. As time passed, Ji Tianxing's injuries gradually healed. The vast and mighty world energy not only healed his injuries, but also increased his lifespan sharply, reaching over 100,000 years. Moreover, his strength was rapidly recovering. From the first level of the true God realm to the second level of the true God realm, then to the third level. When he gradually regained consciousness, he discovered that his strength had already reached the fifth level of the true God realm. Compared to before he fainted, not only had he recovered his strength, he had also advanced by 2 levels. This was definitely a pleasant surprise, a great harvest. Ji Tianxing was overjoyed. While secretly rejoicing, he hurriedly used his mind to sense his own situation. In just a few moments he had seen his own situation. Not only were his injuries completely healed, but his divine power was even more vigorous than before. His divine body had also become stronger. Furthermore, he also discovered something interesting. When he used his mind to check his divine body, his mind could sense the situation around the world through the veins of the world in the Golden Mountain. On the wasteland continent, tens of thousands of ancient beasts surged like a tide on the vast grassland, letting out loud rumbles that shook the heavens. Countless beastmen warriors, dressed in animal skins and armed with bows and arrows, were hunting demonic beasts in the mountains. On the easternmost continent, tens of thousands of sects stood in great numbers among the mountains and rivers, and countless cities were located between the rivers. It was a prosperous place. Scholars attended schools, warriors joined sects, merchants and peddlers passed through the streets, and soldiers went to war to protect the country. On the northern desert continent, there were icy plains that had not melted for tens of thousands of years, giant icebergs that had lasted for millions of years, and many snow-white demonic beasts roamed freely. Hundreds of millions of citizens of the northern desert were wrapped in white bear skins as they shuttled back and forth between the ice and snow. Tens of thousands of white cities were built from ice and snow, and there were glorious lights and temples. On the Xianxia continent, the scorching sun was sometimes high up in the sky and sometimes it was raining cats and dogs. The endless heavenly sea surged with monstrous waves that pounced on thousands of coastal cities. Martial arts powerhouses joined forces to resist the wind and rain, protecting the peace of the region. The prosperous Xianxia was even more prosperous than before, and both civilization and martial arts were rapidly developing. On the Shenwu continent, there were beautiful mountains and rivers everywhere. The people of various races lived in peace and contentment, and the warriors were full of vitality. Tianxing Divine Kingdom and Luoshui Divine Kingdom were peaceful, but within the Taihao Divine Kingdom, the citizens were inexplicably panicking and running around. The customs of the various continents, as well as the myriad scenes of the mountains and rivers, appeared in Ji Tianxing's mind like flowing light. Every scene, every image was exceptionally clear and vivid. It was as if he was there in person. Such a miraculous scene filled him with surprise and joy, and he could not help but exclaim, "Heavens, I actually control 5 continents." Indeed, Ji Tianxing's mind was connected to the wildlands, the easternmost continent, the northern desert, the mysterious heaven continent and the Shenwu continent. Not only could he see every corner of the 5 continents, but he could also control all of their movements. He could even break the peace of the 5 continents with a single thought and change the landscape of the mountains and rivers. Whoosh! With a single thought, an iceberg that spanned tens of thousands of kilometers in the northern desert continent collapsed and turned into ice and snow. With another thought, a vast forest in the easternmost continent was instantly buried underground and turned into a giant abyss. With another thought, dozens of mountains in the Shenwu continent's 100,000 mountains were swallowed up by the vast earth, causing a terrifying earthquake. Ji Tianxing was very satisfied with the ability to control the 5 continents and change the landscape with a single thought. In a trance, he felt as if he had returned to his peak and had returned to his days as the God King. Similarly, he could cause the world to collapse with a flick of his finger and destroy the stars with a wave of his hand. He was supreme and omnipotent. Ji Tianxing was immersed in this excitement when he suddenly sensed an astonishing energy fluctuation coming from the Shenwu continent's 100,000 mountains. The valiant energy fluctuation was enough to shake the heavens and earth and instantly destroy tens of thousands of kilometers of mountains and rivers. This was not something that a martial artist could do. It was the power of a god. Ji Tianxing froze for a moment and then frowned as his mind locked onto the 100,000 mountains. The scenery of the 100,000 mountains immediately appeared in his mind. Endless majestic mountain ranges, nearly 100,000 peaks that pierced through the clouds, and the winding rivers that flowed through the mountains appeared clearly in his mind. His divine consciousness quickly swept across the mountains, and he quickly found the source of the divine power fluctuation. In a lush green mountain range, there were 2 graceful figures flying high up in the sky. They had beautiful faces and their bodies emitted divine power fluctuations. However, they seemed to be in a sorry state and it was obvious that they had suffered heavy injuries. In the sky not too far away from them, a tall powerhouse that resembled a dragon horse was chasing after them with a murderous aura. When Ji Tianxing saw the appearance of the 3, his pupils shrank and his eyes flashed with killing intent. Chapter 2642. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. Ji Tianxing recognized him immediately. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher with purple hair resembling a dragon horse was the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. And those two peerlessly beautiful women of the human race were Jiku and Yunyao. After so many years, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher finally found the Five Elements realm to seek revenge. No wonder the people of the vast divine nation panicked and fled in large numbers. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher must have created chaos and started a massacre to create this situation. I was asleep in the core of the realm. Yao Yao and Cuckoo had no choice but to fight the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. Unfortunately, they were too weak. Even if they joined forces, they could not defeat the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. These thoughts flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind. He quickly figured out what had happened. Just then he saw the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher attack. He threw out two purple fist radiances the size of mountains. The destructive fist radiances locked onto Yunyao and Jiku's auras and sealed off the area within 1,000 miles. Yunyao and Jiku were severely injured. They could not dodge the fist radiances at all. The two of them were about to be hit by the purple fist radiances. Even if they did not die, they would be severely injured. At this critical moment, Ji Tianxing was filled with anger. He instinctively manipulated the heavens and the earth to launch a counterattack. Boom! Two dark green mountains that were 10,000 feet tall suddenly rose from the ground and flew into the sky, blocking Yunyao and Jiku. Boom! Boom! In the next moment, the two purple fist radiances hit the mountains, creating a deafening explosion. Following the earth-shattering sound, the two mountains turned into dust and gravel that scattered in the sky. Everything within 100 miles was covered by dust and gravel. The heavens and the earth were in chaos. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher's purple fist radiance was blocked just like that. He was stunned on the spot. His brows furrowed in confusion as he searched around for something. With his strength and eyesight, he could tell that it was not Yunyao and Jiku's counterattack. There was definitely someone hiding in the dark and helping Yunyao and Jiku block the fist light. Yunyao and Jiku also understood this point. They were both startled for a moment, their faces full of doubt. The two of them couldn't figure out who it was that had helped them in the dark. The first answer that came to their minds was Ji Tianxing. However, they knew that Ji Tianxing had gone to the Earth's core a long time ago and had not appeared for many years. Moreover, both of them used their divine senses to search the surroundings, but they did not sense Ji Tianxing's aura. There's no trace of Tianxing within a radius of 30,000 miles. It shouldn't be him who saved us. Aside from Brother Tianxing, who else would help us? Who is strong enough to block the attack of the great Emperor of Heaven extermination? Yunyao and Jiku frowned and thought to themselves. At this moment, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher had also guessed that Ji Tianxing was behind this. However, he could not find Ji Tianxing's aura anywhere. He was not so sure. Therefore, he waved his hands again and shot out two sky-splitting purple blades towards Yunyao and Jiku. You despicable B*****starred. Do you dare to show yourself and fight me? The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher roared in disdain. His voice reverberated in the air. The two sky-splitting purple blades, which were 10 miles long, locked onto Yunyao and Jiku's aura and slashed towards them. At this critical moment, Jiku held Yunyao's hand tightly and was ready to retreat into the heavenly pagoda. However, both of them were still hopeful. They wanted to see if the person who had helped them in secret would help them again. The result did not disappoint them. Another loud rumble came from the depths of the earth. The next moment, endless dark red lava condensed into two fire pillars that were 10,000 feet tall and shot up into the sky. Bang! Bang! The two dark red pillars of fire blocked the heaven-splitting violet blade and exploded with two earth-shaking explosions. The sky-splitting purple blades shattered and turned into billions of purple light shards that scattered in the sky. The fire pillars also shattered and turned into rolling waves of fire that covered the sky. At the same time, two more fire pillars shot out from the ground under the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher's feet and shot towards him. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher's expression changed. He curled his lips into a disdainful smile and stomped his foot. You B*****starred, is this all you've got? How disappointing. As he spoke, two shadows of hooves the size of mountains appeared from his two front hooves and smashed into the fire pillars. Boom! Crack! With a loud bang, the fire pillars were smashed into pieces. They turned into flames that covered the sky and scattered across the land. Instantly, more than a dozen mountains and countless forests were set ablaze. Red flames rose into the sky and thick smoke billowed. Between the heavens and the earth, a cold shout filled with anger rang out. Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher, you useless old dog. What can you do even if you sneak into the world of 5 elements? A deep and vigorous sound wave reverberated endlessly between heaven and earth. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher Yun Yao and Ji Ku's expressions changed when they heard that. Yun Yao and Ji Ku widened their eyes in disbelief. However, their faces were filled with surprise. The two of them were both surprised and overjoyed. They could not believe that the person who had attacked them secretly was Ji Tianxing. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher's face turned pale. His eyes were filled with anger and his murderous intent surged. Ji Tianxing, you be ****, you've been playing tricks. Do you think that by hiding in the dark and using these petty tricks, you can stop this emperor's attack? You're too naive. I suggest that you come out and accept your death as soon as possible. Otherwise, I'll let you see how I kill those 2 women with your own eyes. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher roared furiously. He formed a divine seal with his palms and used a destructive divine skill to attack Yun Yao and Ji Ku. Heaven Punisher. As the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher roared, endless purple light shot out from his palms. It formed thousands of swords, spears, swords and halberds and scattered in all directions. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Thousands of purple lights flashed and the shadows of swords and sabers appeared. They were about to form an array with a radius of 3,000 miles to seal off the land. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher had made up his mind. He wanted to imprison Yun Yao and Ji Ku with the Heaven Punisher divine array so that they could not escape. As he killed Yun Yao and Ji Ku in the array, Ji Tianxing could only watch from the dark. He could not interfere. Even if Ji Tianxing attacked, he would not be able to break the Heaven Punisher divine array. He would not be a threat to the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. This was the best of both worlds. At this critical moment, Ji Tianxing's voice rang in Yun Yao and Ji Ku's minds. Yao Yao Cuckoo, your injuries are too serious. You can't stay here any longer. Go back to the Heavenly Tower to heal your injuries. Leave the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher to me. I'll take care of him. Yun Yao and Ji Ku were stunned. They asked in unison, what will you do if we run away? Ji Tianxing's voice rang in their minds again. Don't worry about me. I'm invincible in the 5 elements realm. Unless the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher can destroy the entire realm, he won't be able to hurt me. Chapter 2643. Ji Tianxing's reply stunned Yun Yao and Ji Ku. The two of them looked at each other in surprise and confusion. The two of them didn't understand what Ji Tianxing meant. However, they had absolute trust in Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing dared to say that there must be a reason. Soon, thousands of saber lights and sword images covered 1,500 kilometers, forming a light screen that covered the sky and covered the sun. The heaven-punishing divine formation was about to take shape. An invisible suppressive force had already descended from the sky. At such a critical moment, Yun Yao and Ji Ku did not hesitate anymore. They said at the same time, Tianxing will leave first. You must be careful. As soon as they finished speaking, Ji Ku connected with the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower. Swoosh. A golden light flashed and she and Yun Yao disappeared into thin air. In the next moment, the two of them returned to the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower in the north of the Ruins of God. They appeared in the Great Luo Divine Formation on the 5th level. Phew, they were finally safe. Both of them heaved a sigh of relief. Ji Ku looked relieved and said, Fortunately, I've already refined the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower. No matter where I am, I can come back with just a thought. Yun Yao nodded and said, That's right. This is the power of a king-grade divine artifact. The Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower can even block the will of heaven. It's a top king-grade divine artifact. After saying that, the two of them fell silent. Ji Ku hesitated for a moment and asked, Eldest senior sister, what did big brother Tianxing mean just now? Yun Yao thought for a moment and said with some uncertainty, According to my experience, the words that he said should be referring to, he has formed some kind of connection with the 5 elements realm. The entire realm will protect him and become his shield. Perhaps so. We'll have to wait until he defeats the Great Emperor of Heaven Punishing before we ask him about the details. Ji Ku said regretfully, It's a pity that we can't watch the battle in the tower. She wondered if brother Tianxing could defeat the Heaven Punisher. His own safety shouldn't be a problem, right? Yun Yao comforted her. Don't worry. Since Tianxing is confident, we should trust him too. Let's go treat our wounds first and then contact him. Jiku nodded and entered the 6th level's distorted spacetime with her to recuperate in seclusion. Meanwhile, Ji Tianxing was at the core of the 5 elements world, sitting on the sacred golden mountain with his eyes closed. On the surface he seemed to be resting with his eyes closed. But in fact he was using his mind to control the veins of the world and the 100,000 mountains to fight against Great Emperor Tianfa. Thousands of purple saber lights and sword shadows formed a heaven-punishing divine formation that covered the sky and covered an area of 3,000 miles. The whole area had been sealed. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punishing was inside. He was strengthened by an invisible force, which made his combat prowess even stronger. However, Yun Yao and Jiku had already escaped. The only opponent left for the Great Emperor of Heaven Punishing was Ji Tianxing. But Ji Tianxing was hiding in the dark, so the Great Emperor of Heaven Punishing couldn't do anything. Boom boom boom. The magma in the depths of the earth condensed into pillars of fire that shot toward Emperor Xianxia. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punishing could only control the divine formation to release countless saber lights and sword shadows to attack the lava pillars. With loud noises, the saber lights and sword shadows collapsed. The lava pillars were all shattered and turned into raging fire. The entire heaven-punishing divine formation was filled with dazzling fire. The mountains and the earth were all scorched. The terrifying heat and fire waves drowned the Great Emperor of Heaven Punishing. He had to form a shield with his divine power to protect himself from the fire waves. However, apart from the lava pillars, thousands of stone pillars and spikes also flew out of the ground. The sharp stone pillars shot out like spears and drowned the Great Emperor of Heaven Punishing. Bang 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 bang. Countless stone spikes hit the Great Emperor of Heaven Punishing, but they were all blocked by the divine power shield. The stone spikes were all shattered into pieces and scattered in the sky. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punishing's divine power shield was also full of cracks and holes. He was furious, but he couldn't get away. He could only cast spells to defend himself. Damn it! My heaven-punishing divine formation has already covered 3,000 miles. How did he get in? The Great Emperor of Heaven Punishing mumbled in panic. He couldn't figure out what method Ji Tianxing had used to be able to attack him without him noticing at all. Even the heaven-punishing divine formation he had set up couldn't do anything. Just as he was filled with doubts, a streak of faint purple light sped over from afar. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, the purple light came close and quickly disappeared. A pitch-black battleship that was 1,000 feet long appeared. Without a doubt, it was the Imperial Tutor of Heaven Punishing. The Imperial Tutor stayed in the battleship and frowned as he looked at the heaven-punishing divine formation that covered the sky. This is strange. With the Great Emperor's strength, it should be easy for him to kill those 2 bitches. Why is he using the heaven-punishing divine formation? And why is he fighting so fiercely? While he was confused, the Great Emperor of Heaven Punishing ordered him, Imperial Tutor, those 2 women have escaped. I am now fighting with Ji Tianxing. This is strange. I don't know what method Ji Tianxing used to hide in the dark. Even I can't find him. Hold the fort and think of a way to drag Ji Tianxing out. The Imperial Tutor understood the seriousness of the situation. He immediately replied, Yes, Great Emperor. Don't worry. He had thought that it would be easy. However, after he released his divine sense and searched the surrounding 60,000 miles, he still couldn't find Ji Tianxing. He finally realized that the situation was tricky. His mood and expression turned serious. Damn it! Where is Ji Tianxing hiding? If he can fight with the Great Emperor, he must be within 60,000 miles. The Imperial Tutor frowned as he pondered. Many thoughts flashed through his mind. Suddenly, there was a deafening sound of something shattering. Kaboom! The heaven-punishing divine formation that covered a radius of 3,000 miles was shattered by countless pillars of fire and rock spikes. It had collapsed. The violent impact was mixed with endless flames and sand as it hit the Great Emperor of Heaven Punishing. Bang! The Great Emperor of Heaven Punishing was sent flying. He rolled and crashed into the Imperial Tutor's battleship. The Imperial Tutor came to his senses and quickly cast a spell to catch the Great Emperor of Heaven Punishing. Swoosh! He released a giant palm that blotted out the sky and grabbed the Great Emperor of Heaven Punishing and pulled him back into the battleship. Before he could escape with the battleship, the mountains and earth around him suddenly collapsed, creating a huge abyss. A 1,000-mile wide abyss appeared on the ground. It was like a giant black mouth that released a terrifying devouring force that enveloped the battleship. Crack crack crack. The warship immediately tilted and swayed as it fell into the abyss. The terrifying devouring force pulled at the battleship, causing countless cracks to appear on the battleship. The Imperial Tutor and the Great Emperor of Heaven Punishing were shocked. Their eyes widened in disbelief. Chapter 2644. The Imperial Tutor's battleship was not a heavenly god-level battleship. However, it was still a true god-level upper-tier battleship. Its speed and defense were both very powerful. Even the Great Emperor of Heaven Slayer would not be able to tear this battleship apart easily. But now Xianxia had done it. He did not even have to show his face. All he had to do was open up a 1,000-mile-wide chasm in the ground, and the Imperial Tutor's battleship could not escape. The terrifying devouring power not only sucked the battleship into the chasm. As the battleship struggled, the hull of the battleship began to twist and shatter. After 20 breaths of time, the entire battleship broke into pieces. Kacha-kacha. With crisp cracking sounds, the battleship was torn into hundreds of pieces and fell into the chasm. The Great Emperor of Heaven Slayer and the Imperial Tutor were shocked. They hurriedly crawled out of the wreckage of the battleship and tried their best to escape from the chasm. The Great Emperor of Heaven Slayer unleashed all his strength. His entire body was engulfed in purple flames as he desperately fled into the distance. The Imperial Tutor did the same. However, he was not strong enough and could not make any headway. The devouring power continued to expand. It was like the bloody mouth of a giant beast that could devour heaven. It gradually closed in on the Imperial Tutor. The Imperial Tutor was terrified. He was extremely anxious. He screamed at the top of his lungs and struggled wildly. However, the powerful devouring power was like an invisible hand that grabbed him and dragged him into the chasm. The Imperial Tutor was about to fall into the chasm. What awaited him was a torrential sea of lava and fire. At this critical moment, the Great Emperor of Heaven Slayer rushed over. He grabbed the Imperial Tutor's arm and dragged him out. Swoosh. There was a flash of purple light. The Great Emperor of Heaven Slayer and the Imperial Tutor disappeared. In the next moment, the two of them teleported thousands of miles away and appeared in the sky above a mountain range in the distance. The Imperial Tutor looked relieved that he had survived the disaster. He squeezed out a smile on his pale face. The Great Emperor of Heaven Slayer heaved a sigh of relief. His chest rose and fell rapidly as he panted. Damn bastard. How did he do it? Could it be the damned law of Earth again? Emperor Tian-Fa cursed as he panted. Back then, on the barren planet near Purple Heaven Star, he had witnessed Xianxia's law of Earth. Now Xianxia was hiding in the dark and he and the Imperial Tutor were in deep trouble. He was basically certain that Xianxia was relying on the power of the laws of Earth to achieve such an effect. But what infuriated him the most was, even though he knew this was the case, he couldn't fight back. Imperial Tutor, don't just stand there. Let's leave this place first and then we can make further plans. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher did not dare waste any more time. He quickly fled with the Imperial Tutor. He had already determined that the current Xianxia was very different from the past. Not only were his methods and tricks more profound, but his strength had also increased significantly. Great Emperor Tian-Fa even had a bad feeling. He had a feeling that his trip to the world of 5 elements would not go smoothly. Whoosh. With a flash of purple light, the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor teleported 800 miles away. They crossed dozens of mountains and flew toward the south. They wanted to leave the 100,000 mountains and get rid of Xianxia as soon as possible. However, just as the two of them teleported to the sky above a mountain, the mountain shattered and turned into dust. The metal ores in the mountain and the ground were instantly sucked dry. They condensed into 12 pale golden spears and shot toward the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The spears pierced through the sky and surrounded the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor with the power to pierce through everything. Both of them looked serious. They had to take out their divine weapons and cast spells to block the attack. Bang 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 bang. The two of them slashed at the 12 golden spears with overwhelming saber radiance and sword shadows. A series of muffled sounds rang out. The golden spears and saber radiance and sword shadows all shattered and scattered in the sky. After neutralizing Xianxia's attack, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor didn't stay any longer. They continued to run into the distance. They couldn't find Ji Tianxing at all. Of course they couldn't fight back. Other than blocking the attacks, they could only run away. There was nothing else they could do. However, as soon as the two of them ran for 300 miles, more rock spikes emerged from the ground, the mountain and the forest. Bang 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 bang. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor swung their sabers and swords. They destroyed 80% of the rock spikes, but they were still hit dozens of times. Their divine power shields were shattered, and their faces turned ghastly pale. Then the two of them continued to run in the sky. Ji Tianxing's pursuit and interception never stopped. Almost every second the mountain, the ground and the forest would launch an attack. They either intercepted or attacked the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor. There were magma pillars, dark golden light pillars, rock spikes, and all kinds of light and shadow formed by divine power. There were so many different kinds of attacks that it was impossible to defend against. Although the various attacks weren't very powerful and couldn't injure the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor, they didn't dare to fight head-on. Otherwise they would still be injured and their divine power would be greatly depleted. They could only stay alert and carefully cast spells to block and neutralize the attacks. However, the attacks didn't stop. No matter where the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor ran, they couldn't escape. At first it was fine. The two of them were always able to escape. However, as time went on, they became more and more tired and irritated. Their injuries kept worsening and their divine power was depleted. 4 hours later, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor finally escaped from the 100,000 mountains. Everywhere they passed, the mountains and the ground within hundreds of thousands of miles were scorched and ruined. Countless ravines and abysses were left behind. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor were exhausted. They were so depressed that they wanted to vomit blood. After escaping from the 100,000 mountains, the two of them flew above the grassland and heaved a sigh of relief. Phew, we're finally out of that damned place. The Imperial Tutor heaved a sigh of relief. He felt like he had just survived a disaster. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher's eyes were cold. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth as he cursed. Ji Tianxing kept attacking us, but we couldn't fight back. We don't even know where he's hiding. What the hell is this? That despicable bastard. He's so despicable. I can't take this lying down. I have to find him as soon as possible and kill him. The two of them thought that they were out of danger after leaving the 100,000 mountains and coming to the grassland. However, as soon as the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher finished speaking, suddenly, a few wide ravines appeared on the boundless green grassland. Hundreds of dark red pillars of lava shot toward the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor with terrifying divine flames. The power of the dark red divine flames was comparable to the full force attack of a level 8 true god. It was enough to kill the Imperial Tutor. It was enough to threaten the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. The two of them were shocked and enraged. They couldn't believe their eyes. That bastard. We've already escaped to this place. How can he still attack us? Great Emperor, let's run. Chapter 2645. In the face of imminent disaster, the Imperial Preceptor did not hesitate to speed up his escape. Of course, in order not to be accused of abandoning his master, he shouted to warn the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. When the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher turned around, the Imperial Tutor was already 100 miles away. More than 60 lava pillars immediately engulfed the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. B*****. The Imperial Tutor was so cowardly that he had fled alone. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher was so angry that his body trembled. He could not help but curse. But he knew that now was not the time to be angry. He hurriedly waved his divine sword and slashed out dozens of purple sword radiances at the lava pillars around him. Bam, bam, bam. A series of muffled sounds rang out. The sword radiances collapsed and fire splattered everywhere. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher had neutralized Ji Tianxing's attack, but his hair was disheveled and his body was charred. He looked rather pathetic. His divine power was also rapidly depleting and weakening. At the same time, more than 30 lava pillars changed directions and blasted toward the Imperial Tutor, who was 100 miles away. The Imperial Tutor panicked. He hurriedly formed a shield to block the attacks. He also waved his divine sword and slashed out countless sword radiances. Bam, bam, bam. After a series of muffled sounds, the sword radiances and lava pillars all collapsed. However, the dark red divine flames had destroyed the Imperial Tutor's divine power shield. Half of his body was charred black and one of his legs was burned to ashes. The heart-wrenching pain caused him to let out a shrill scream that reverberated endlessly in the sky. Jietianxing, you be asterisk starred, you be asterisk starred. I will tear you to pieces and burn your bones to ashes. However, the Imperial Tutor's response was more than 100 lava pillars. Each pillar was more than 100 feet tall and surrounded by surging red divine flames. They blasted toward the Imperial Tutor. The Imperial Preceptor's body suddenly trembled. His eyes were filled with deep fear. In his fear, he even forgot about the pain in his body and teleported away. However, he was still one step too slow. Although he dodged more than 90 fire pillars, he was still hit by 7 of them. Ping ping ping. Another series of muffled sounds rang out. Half of the Imperial Tutor's body was completely burned to ashes by the divine flames and scattered in the sky. The remaining half of his body was also charred black, with black smoke rising in spirals. The wound was charred, and the purple divine blood that oozed out was also burned dry by the divine flame. The violent force of the impact sent the Imperial Tutor flying, rolling and crashing into the distance. The incomparable pain made him so angry that he almost lost his mind. Not far away, Great Emperor Tianfa saw the Imperial Tutor being severely injured with his own eyes, but he couldn't save him in time. Furious, the Emperor of Heaven Punisher cursed 3 times. He quickly teleported to the Imperial Tutor's side to help him. He used a grappling technique and grabbed the Imperial Tutor with his giant purple palm. He teleported 800 miles away. However, hundreds of 5-colored giant swords emerged from the grassland and shot up into the sky from the ground. The Imperial Tutor was in so much pain that he couldn't defend himself. The Emperor of Heaven Punisher had no choice but to protect the Imperial Tutor. He waved his divine sword and used an exquisite sword technique, sending out hundreds of purple sword radiances. Ping ping ping. Crack, crack, crack. The sword radiances clashed in the sky, creating muffled sounds and shattering sounds. The Imperial Tutor was saved and his injuries didn't worsen. However, the Emperor of Heaven Punisher's shield was shattered by the 5-colored sword radiances. A dozen wounds were left on his body so deep that his bones could be seen. Purple blood gushed out and sprinkled in the sky. The great Emperor of Heaven Extermination frowned. His eyes were filled with shock. Damn it! What kind of power is this? How can it break through my defense? He had fought with Jietianxing before and knew that Jietianxing was only a true immortal. However, he was a half-step true immortal. He was almost invincible among those below the true immortal realm. Jietianxing wouldn't be able to hurt him, no matter how powerful his divine skill was. However, he was injured now. He could clearly tell that the power of the 5-colored sword radiances wasn't the power of a true immortal. It was a very special and powerful divine power. The power made him feel like he was fighting against the mountains and the earth. The entire world was trying to kill him. That's definitely not divine power. Even a true immortal might not be able to release that kind of power. However, Jietianxing is only a true immortal. How did he do it? The Emperor of Heaven Punisher was filled with questions. He couldn't figure it out. While he was thinking, more than 300 golden giant swords emerged from the grassland and shot toward him like a rain of arrows. The Emperor of Heaven Punisher came to his senses. He didn't dare to think anymore and quickly teleported away. At the same time, in the golden light ball at the core of the world, Jietianxing sat on the golden mountain with his eyes closed. A satisfied smile appeared on his face. I'm closely connected to the 5 elements world. Not only can I control heaven and earth, but I can also release the power of the world. I knew it. Even a true immortal would be injured by the power of the world, let alone the Emperor of Heaven Punisher. It was obvious that Jietianxing had used the power of the world to injure the Emperor of Heaven Punisher. Before this, he had only controlled 5 continents. He could only practice controlling heaven and earth to fight the Emperor of Heaven Punisher. Now he could freely control heaven and earth to attack the Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor. Therefore he tried again. He tried to use the power of the world. As expected, he succeeded. It was very effective. This lifted his spirits and made him even more confident. Then the Emperor of Heaven Punisher fled in the sky. He ran all the way to the Luoshui divine nation. Ji Tianxing sat on the golden mountain and used his mind to control heaven and earth to attack. He also released the power of the world to chase after the Emperor of Heaven Punisher. The Emperor of Heaven Punisher fled for several hours, covering hundreds of thousands of kilometers. His divine power had been greatly weakened, and his injuries were worsening. Dozens of wounds had appeared all over his body. As time passed, his situation would only worsen. He was only injured. In comparison, the imperial tutor's fate was much worse. He had only managed to escape 100,000 kilometers before he was killed by a blade of light condensed from the power of the world, and his body was torn to shreds. The Emperor of Heaven Punisher could not even protect himself, let alone save the imperial tutor. The dignified 6th-level true immortal imperial tutor had fallen just like that. In order to escape as quickly as possible and to defend against Ji Tianxing's attacks, the Emperor of Heaven Punisher had no choice but to take out his warship. The Heaven Punishing warship was a god-grade warship, and its defenses were extremely strong. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, the Heaven Punishing warship had covered hundreds of kilometers with purple light. However, Ji Tianxing controlled 5 continents. His divine consciousness covered not only Shenwu continent, but the other 4 continents as well. As long as the Heaven Punishing warship did not leave Shenwu continent and the 5 elemental realm, it would still be under Ji Tianxing's control. Moreover, the Heaven Punishing warship was 10,000 meters long and as large as a mountain. Such a large target was much easier to hit than the Emperor of Heaven Punisher. Wherever the Heaven Punishing warship passed, tens of thousands of golden blades of light appeared and rained down like a torrential downpour. Boom 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 boom. Every second, the Heaven Punishing warship was struck by the golden blades of light dozens of times. Chapter 2646. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. Great Emperor Tian Fa drove the divine battleship and escaped 60,000 miles away. He was about to reach the border of the Luoshui divine nation. However, the divine battleship was hit by the golden light blade tens of thousands of times. Finally, it could not take it anymore and collapsed. The divine battleship, which was 30,000 feet long, was cut into pieces and scattered among the ruins. More than 2,000 people who had followed the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing to the battle fell from the sky. Among them were 2,000 black-armored warriors, more than 30 golden-armored martial gods, and 2 LV-7 martial god realm commanders. These were the elites that great Emperor Tian Fa had handpicked. Originally, great Emperor Tian Fa had planned to send these elite warriors and martial gods to control the continents and divine nations after conquering the 5 elements world. But now his plan had fallen through. The 2,000 black-armored warriors and golden-armored martial gods were scattered in the sky. They were exposed to Ji Tianxing's attacks. How could Ji Tianxing let go of such a great opportunity? Without hesitation, he controlled the heavens and earth and released the sacred and powerful power of the world. Tens of thousands of golden light blades shot toward the black-armored warriors and golden-armored martial gods. Swish, swish, swish. The black-armored warriors and golden-armored martial gods found it difficult to move. They slowed down. Even though they were terrified when they saw the swish. Swish, swish, swish. Great Emperor Tian Fa passed through the debris of the battleship and flew to the sky a few hundred miles away. When he saw this, his expression changed. He could not help but yell. Oh no! At this critical moment, he did not care about his own safety. He charged toward the crowd with his sword. He swung his divine sword with no regard for his own safety. He slashed out sword radiance to block the swish of the golden light blades. At the same time, he cast a purple light shield to protect the black-armored warriors and golden-armored martial gods. However, it was all in vain. Swish, 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 swish. With a series of muffled sounds, the purple light shield that covered the sky was smashed into pieces. One after another, the black-armored warriors were struck by the golden blades of light and shattered into pieces on the spot. Even the martial gods in golden armor could not resist the attack of the golden light blade and were instantly cut into pieces. Suddenly, the black-armored warriors and golden-armored martial gods fell from the sky like dumplings. Countless pieces of flesh and blood fell on the ruined ground, and a purple rain of blood floated in the sky. The muffled sounds of the light blades colliding, the anguished cries of the people on the brink of death, and the despairing screams all mixed together and reverberated in the air. In just 20 breaths of time, the 2,000 black-armored warriors were all dead. With their strength as martial sages, they did not have the right to survive the battle of deities. Most of them were instantly killed by the golden blade. Only a few managed to escape from the golden light blades under the protection of the great Emperor of Heaven punishing. However, they were unable to escape the suppressive force of 100,000 miles of heaven and earth, and were crushed into minced meat in just a few moments. Even the more than 30 golden-armored martial gods could not hold on for long. 90% of them were killed by the golden light blades. The remaining few martial gods were severely injured and were barely hanging on. The great Emperor of Heaven punishing was also severely injured. There were dozens of wounds all over his body, and one of his legs had been crushed by the golden light blades. The great Emperor of Heaven punishing gave it his all and performed various secret skills. He even took out 3 supreme-grade true god weapons to protect himself and the few golden-armored martial gods who were severely injured. Under the great Emperor of Heaven punishing's protection, the few martial gods desperately fled to the south. However, Ji Tianxing did not stop chasing after them. After 15 minutes, the few golden-armored martial gods who were severely injured were also crushed into pieces. The great Emperor of Heaven punishing was the only one left in the world, and he was still fighting alone. He continued to flee to the south, avoiding and blocking Ji Tianxing's attacks along the way. However, his injuries were getting worse and his divine power was weakening. His combat strength was also decreasing rapidly. He gradually calmed down from his initial anger. No matter how unwilling he was, he had to face reality. He had to admit that he had lost. It was true that he could not defeat Ji Tianxing in the world of 5 elements. Ji Tianxing had not shown himself since the beginning. He had only been attacking and hunting in the dark. However, the people around the great Emperor of Heaven punishing had all been killed. He was the only one left and he was also severely injured. He had fled for several hours, covering hundreds of thousands of miles. In the beginning he had thought that Ji Tianxing would eventually run out of energy. When that happened, he would have a chance to escape danger and find a way to counterattack. However, reality had proven that Ji Tianxing's energy seemed to be limitless. Not only had he not run out of energy, but he also showed no signs of weakening. This was too terrifying. This was also one of the reasons why the great Emperor of Heaven punishing was so shocked and depressed. He had reason to believe that even if he fled for another 1,000,000 miles, he would still not be able to escape Ji Tianxing's pursuit. Moreover, Ji Tianxing's energy would not run out. It seems that Ji Tianxing has completely mastered the law of earth. He can even use that special power. If I continue to fight with him, I won't even be able to touch his shadow. I might even die. A few years ago I captured him easily and almost killed him. Now he has forced me into such a desperate situation. This is a humiliation, a great humiliation. The great Emperor of Heaven punishing thought to himself as he fled. It seems that I can only save my life if I leave this place. Even if I give up this world and the boundless divine stone, I still have a few star regions and billions of people and soldiers. There are still thousands of worlds waiting for me to conquer. As for the world of 5 elements in Ji Tianxing, I have to think about it carefully. After making up his mind, the great Emperor of Heaven punishing executed a divine technique and prepared to escape the world of 5 elements. He swung his divine sword with all his might and slashed open the sky. Crack! With a loud explosion, a 10-mile-long crack appeared in the sky. White gusts of wind and crimson heavenly flames poured down from the black spatial rifts. The great Emperor of Heaven punishing passed through the crack in a flash and entered the layer of wind and fire. He was protected by a purple divine light as he passed through the vortex formed by the wind and fire. He flew toward the golden light barrier at an extremely fast speed. When Ji Tianxing saw this, he immediately frowned and was filled with anxiety. He knew that the great Emperor of Heaven punishing was a great disaster. If the great Emperor of Heaven punishing escaped from the world of 5 elements alive, it would be difficult to kill him in the future. Ji Tianxing wanted to use this opportunity to kill the great Emperor of Heaven punishing in the world of 5 elements. However, he did not truly control the entire world. Currently he only controlled 5 continents. He did not control the depths of the Earth's core, the endless heavenly ocean, or the layer of wind and fire outside the sky. Therefore, Ji Tianqing could not do anything when the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing entered the layer of wind and fire. He could only watch as the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing escaped from the world of 5 elements. Chapter 2647. Bam. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher passed through the heavenly wind and fire layer and crashed into the golden light barrier. He held the divine sword with both hands and used all his strength to break a hole in the golden light barrier. After passing through the hole, he escaped from the 5 elements world and flew into the vast void. Although he was severely injured and had used up almost all of his divine power, he was at the end of his rope. However, the divine sword in his hand shone with purple light and carried him through the void. He fled into the distance at the speed of light. Swoosh. After a short while, the divine sword carried the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher into the void and disappeared into the darkness. Not long ago he had brought the Imperial Preceptor and more than 2,000 guards with him, and they had charged over aggressively. Now he was all alone. He was severely injured and had to flee in humiliation. He could only suppress his deep hatred in his heart and plot revenge in the future. In the core region of the 5 elements world, on the golden mountain in the middle of the golden light sphere, Ji Tianqing slowly opened his eyes. His face was filled with regret as he let out a sigh. What a pity. He escaped. If I miss this chance, it will be difficult to kill him again. As long as the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher was alive and the Heaven Punisher tribe was not destroyed, there would always be a hidden threat. He could not be at ease. After all, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher had witnessed the wonders of the 5 elements world and the powerful effects of the Dawn Stones. Even the deity behind the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher was very interested in the Dawn Stones. No matter what, the Heaven Punisher tribe would not let go of the 5 elements world. That was why Ji Tianqing was worried and anxious. Fortunately, he had merged half of the 5 elements world and controlled the 5 continents. Even if the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher came back with the Heaven Punisher army in a few years, he would not be afraid. After this battle, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher is severely injured. He will not be able to recover to his peak condition in at least 10 years. He will not dare to invade the 5 elements world again if he is not confident. We have at least 10 years. We must use this time to increase our strength. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself and clenched his fists. Then he looked to his side and saw 2 black dawn stone jade slips floating in the air. He picked up the 2 jade slips and used his divine sense to read the information inside. After reading it, he realized that it was a message from Taihao Yunqi and Yun Yao, informing him of the invasion of the Heaven Punisher race and the arrival of the Heaven Punisher Great Emperor. Ji Tianqing received the scroll from Taihao Yunqi and replied with a message. Great Emperor Tian Fa was severely injured by me. He has already escaped from the world of 5 elements. I have destroyed the Heaven Punishing army and the battleships he brought with him. You don't have to worry. You should first comfort the people of the divine nation, then conserve your energy and strive to break through to the martial god realm as soon as possible. After he finished speaking, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and took out an origin stone jade slip. Swish. Jade simplified turned into a black light, passing through the golden ball of light and disappearing into the endless lava. Then Ji Tianqing sent another message to Yun Yao. Yao Yao, I'm currently in the core region of the elemental world. Refining the world core might take a few more years. The Heaven Punisher Great Emperor has escaped with severe injuries. He won't dare to attack again for at least 10 years. I have destroyed the Imperial Tutor, more than 2,000 Heaven Punishers, and the Heaven Punishing divine battleships. You don't have to worry. Take care of the affairs of the 2 divine nations and cultivate in seclusion in the divine pagoda. When I'm done, I'll meet up with you and we'll talk about it in detail. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and sent the origin stone jade slip out. Swish. The jade slip flew out of the golden ball of light and disappeared into the raging lava. Ji Tianqing did not waste any more time. He began to channel his energy and entered the golden mountain with his mind to refine the world meridian. He wanted to refine the other half of the world and fully control the world of 5 elements. By then, the world of 5 elements would be in a passive position and become active. After all, he would be able to leave the purple heaven star zone with the world of 5 elements. A moment later, in the distorted space in the Jutian 10 Absolutes Tower, Yun Yao sat upright on an exquisite jade bed, her eyes closed as she circulated her energy to heal her injuries. Swoosh. In a flash, the origin stone jade slip flew over and stopped in front of her. She had been waiting for Ji Tianxing's news. When she sensed the arrival of the jade slip, she immediately stopped channeling her energy. She reached out to take the origin stone jade slip. After reading the information in it, she heaved a sigh of relief. That's great. Tianxing has indeed found a fortuitous opportunity in the depths of the Earth's core. He wants to refine the world of 5 elements. No wonder he can control the divine power of heaven and earth and fight with the great emperor of heaven and earth even though he's not in the 100,000 mountains. This is incredible. I have to tell Ku this good news quickly so that she won't worry. After saying that, Yunyao took the origin stone jade slip and went to find Ji Ku. The situation was just as she had expected. Ji Ku was channeling her energy to heal herself. However, she was restless and worried. She was only relieved when Yunyao gave her the jade slip and learned about the results. The two of them chatted for a while before Yunyao left. She returned to the jade bed to continue channeling her energy to heal herself. Ji Ku also followed Ji Tianxing's arrangement. She first went into seclusion to heal herself before working hard to improve her strength. Soon the distorted space calmed down. Yunyao, Ji Ku, Bai Long, Qian Yu, Hei Long, Long Kun, Qin Qin Ye, and the others were all focused on cultivating. Time flew like a shuttle. Time flew like an arrow. Unknowingly, 400 years had passed in the distorted space. After 400 years of cultivating in seclusion, Bai Long, Long Kun, Qian Yu, and Hei Long broke through to the true God realm. Among them, Bai Long was the strongest. He had reached level 2 true God realm. Qian Yu and Hei Long were both at level 1 true God realm. The youngest, Qin Qin and Ye, had also grown up. The siblings were indeed talented and extraordinary. They had both reached level 8 martial God realm. According to the speed of their strength improvement, they might break through to the true God realm in another 100 years. At that time they would become the youngest true gods. However, the two of them did not change much in appearance. Qin Qin had grown to 5 feet tall. She looked like a handsome young man of 12 or 13 years old. Her appearance was very similar to Ji Tianxing. She had a noble and cold temperament. Ye was only 2 inches shorter than Qin Qin. She looked like a naive 12-year-old girl. Not only did she inherit Yunyao's beauty, but she was even more beautiful. Although she looked like she was only 12 years old, she was already as beautiful as a fairy. She had a noble temperament. She was cheerful, innocent, and kind. Her pair of bright and clear eyes seemed to be able to purify all the evil in the world. Anyone who saw her would be amazed by the beauty of nature and the favor of the heavens. There was actually such a pure, holy, beautiful, and cute girl in the world. Perhaps only the children of the heavens were worthy of such beauty and temperament. As for Yunyao and Ji Ku, they had only cultivated in seclusion for 360 years. After all, they had left the godly pagoda a few times to deal with the matters of Tianxing and Luo Shui. Even so, their strength continued to increase. They had reached level 6 true God realm. Chapter 2648. 400 years had passed in the distorted space. Only 8 years had passed in the 5 elements world. 8 years had passed, but the 5 elements world did not seem to have changed much. There were no invasions and the continents were as peaceful as before. The people lived and worked in peace and the martial artists worked hard. The martial arts world was becoming more and more prosperous. Even if there were some small disturbances in the 5 continents, it was just a struggle between countries and factions. Only a few people knew that the world of 5 elements had actually undergone earth-shattering and world-shaking changes. Because a certain person who was good at creating miracles, had monstrous talent, and was the reincarnation of a divine king, had taken control of the entire world. The golden ball of light at the world's core was a mysterious space. The flow of time inside was 10 times faster than in the 5 elements world. 8 years had passed in the outside world, but 80 years had passed in the world's core. For 80 years, Ji Tianxing had been sitting at the peak of the Golden Mountain, refining the world's veins without stopping for a moment. His divine power had been exhausted more than 10 times, and his divine blood had been drained several times. He had also been unconscious for more than 20 years. However, he had merged with the 5 elements world, and the Golden Mountain would always release the world's power to nourish him. It was because of this that he was able to survive unscathed. His divine power would recover when it was exhausted, and his divine blood would be reborn when it was drained. As long as the five elements world was not destroyed, he would not die. Now he had refined 99% of the world's veins and almost controlled the entire world. The five continents, the endless sky sea, and the endless rock and lava deep underground were all under his control. There were only a few mysterious areas deep in the Earth's core that he had never been able to refine or touch. Those mysterious areas were like forbidden areas to him. With his current strength, he could not lift the veil of mystery, let alone control them. One of the areas was in the center of the ruins of God, the deepest underground. Ji Tianxing could guess that that area was the cemetery of the gods in the ruins of God. The cemetery of the gods had always been the five elements world's greatest secret. Whether it was in his previous life or this life, Ji Tianxing could not unravel the mysteries within. Now he had become the master of the five elements world, but he still could not touch the cemetery of the gods. He finally understood that the cemetery of the gods was more mysterious and powerful than he had imagined. Other than that, there were a few other forbidden areas that were similar to the cemetery of the gods. There was almost no difference between being mysterious and being powerful. This made Ji Tianxing's heart itch, and he couldn't help but speculate and analyze. The mausoleum of the gods can even bury godlords and god-kings. This has always been the greatest secret of the five elements world. Perhaps only a divine king expert would have the chance to unravel the mystery. Unexpectedly, there were several forbidden areas in the world of five elements that were as mysterious as the graveyard of the gods. This further proved that the former five elements world was definitely not inferior to the dragon realm and the god realm. It was also an eternal primary world. However, the current world of five elements was obviously damaged and abandoned, and that was why it had fallen to such a state. He really wanted to recover to the God King realm as soon as possible and unravel the mystery of the five elements world. Only then would I be able to understand what exactly happened in the ancient times. Ji Tianxing murmured, his eyes filled with hope and desire. Although his heart was filled with regret, he thought about it and felt slightly comforted. Although I can't touch those forbidden areas right now, I can't. However, I have complete control over the world of five elements and have already lived and died with it. Not only have I reached level 9 True God Realm, but I can also control the world of five elements to leave this void and even leave the Zishao starfield. That's right. Ji Tianxing had cast spells on the Golden Mountain for 80 years. Not only had he controlled the entire world, but his strength had also reached level 9 True God Realm. If not for the restrictions of the Heavenly Tao, he could have broken through to the Heavenly God Realm. This result made Ji Tianxing realize a problem. The world of five elements in the ancient times was once an eternal primary world that could give birth to god spirits above the Heavenly God Realm. However, after the world of five elements was damaged and abandoned, it fell into the 3,000 mortal worlds and its level dropped. Under the restrictions of the Heavenly Tao, it was impossible for the world of five elements to give birth to a Heavenly God Realm expert. Now that I have reached level 9 True God Realm, my strength is the same as Great Emperor Tianfei's. In the mortal world I am already invincible. If I fight Great Emperor Tianfei again, I will definitely be able to kill him easily. It's time to take revenge and completely destroy the Tianfei tribe. Ji Tianxing gathered his thoughts and stood up slowly with his fists clenched. Let's try out the power of the great space shift first. He muttered to himself. His mind connected to the meridian of the world and used the power of the world. Swoosh. A golden divine light flashed and he disappeared from the golden mountain. In the next instant he left the core of the world, crossed hundreds of millions of miles, and appeared on a barren mountain in the north of the ruins of God. Swoosh. It was early in the morning and the warm sun shone on the mountain peak. Suddenly, a golden light flashed and Ji Tianxing appeared out of thin air. His feet landed on a millstone. As soon as he landed on the ground, he felt dizzy and blurred. He staggered and almost fell. This is my first time using the power of the world. The distance is too far and my divine soul can't take it? Ji Tianxing mumbled awkwardly. He smiled bitterly and said, looks like I need to get used to it. When my divine soul is strong enough, I will be able to come and go freely in the world of five elements. With that, he took out the small golden tower and inserted his divine soul. Swoosh. The small golden tower emitted a dazzling divine light that immediately engulfed his body. Then he entered the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Tower and appeared on the 5th floor, standing in the Origin Divine Formation. Through the Origin Divine Formation he returned to the 6th floor. Coincidentally, Yun Yao had just come out of seclusion. She was about to leave the Divine Tower to check on the situation in the Luoshui Divine Nation. When the two of them met, Yun Yao was pleasantly surprised. She quickly went up to him and asked about his well-being. "Tianxing, you're finally back. Is everything done? Your strength has greatly increased again?" Tianxing nodded and said with a smile, "Yes, I have refined the core of the world of 5 elements and controlled the entire world. My strength has naturally increased and I have reached the 9th level of the true God realm. Soon I will reach the limit of the true God realm and be called a half-step heavenly god. Yao Yao, your strength has also reached the 6th level of the true God realm. I'm sure everyone's strength has increased. The time has come. We have the ability to protect the world of 5 elements and eliminate the heaven punishers. Gather everyone for a meeting. This time it's time for us to take the initiative to attack." Hearing that, Yun Yao was shocked and gratified. She quickly nodded and said, "Okay, I'll go and inform them now." With that, she turned around and flew away happily to inform Ji Ku and the 2 children. Tianxing split up with her to gather by Long Lon Kuan, Qian Yu and Black Dragon. In less than 15 minutes, everyone received the news and gathered around Tianxing. When everyone gathered and saw each other's changes and growth, they were all very happy and excited. Chapter 2649. After exchanging some pleasantries, everyone understood each other's situation. The fact that Tianxing had refined the world's core and gained control of the 5 elemental world shocked and excited everyone. After 15 minutes, when everyone had calmed down, Tianxing began to talk business. "I've gathered everyone here today to make an announcement, and I hope that everyone can discuss it. The Heaven Punisher has been on the run for 8 years, and he should have recovered from his injuries and returned to his peak. We all know that the Heaven Punisher will definitely not let the 5 elemental world go. He will definitely think of a way to take revenge and steal the origin stones. However, I've already gained control of the 5 elemental world, and I can use some special methods to take it away and leave this star field. Simply put, the 5 elemental world can now move through the void, so we don't have to worry about the Heaven Punisher's revenge. Furthermore, our strength has increased greatly, and we now have 7 true god powerhouses. The time is ripe and we have the qualifications and strength to take revenge on the Heaven Punisher. We can even exterminate them. Thus, I've decided to take the initiative and not wait for death." When Tianxing announced his plan, everyone's eyes widened and complex expressions appeared on their faces. Yun Yao and Ji Ku had no objections, and they nodded without hesitation to show that they agreed with Tianxing's decision. "Tianxing, I think that your plan is feasible. For so many years, we've always been on the passive side and had to be on guard against the Heaven Punisher's attacks. Now we finally have the initiative and we have a high chance of winning. Brother Tianxing, the Heaven Punisher has swept through all the major star fields and destroyed countless worlds and slaughtered countless lives. If we can exterminate the Heaven Punisher, not only will we be protecting the 5 elemental world, but we will also be helping Tianxing achieve his goals." Qian Yu and Black Dragon were very excited, and their eyes were filled with anticipation. "Hee, we've always been bullied by the Heaven Punisher, and the Xinwu continent has suffered so much. Now we can finally hold our heads high and kill our way back with righteousness and confidence. I need to kill 10 million. No, at least 100 million Heaven Punishers to vent the hatred in my heart. Old G, as long as you make the decision, we will support you. Didn't we cultivate in seclusion for so many years so that we could one day fight back and destroy the Heaven Punishers?" Qinchin and Yaya pondered for a moment before speaking up as well. "Father, since you've made this decision, you must have thought it through carefully. I believe in your judgment and am willing to follow you into battle to eradicate the Heaven Punisher race and rid the world of evil." Qinchin cupped her hands towards Tianxing as she spoke with a solemn expression and a serious tone. Not only was his appearance handsome and cold, but his words and actions were also noble and elegant. He was definitely one of the top nobles in the world. Yaya blinked her big watery eyes and waved the exquisite and beautiful Source Stone Divine Sword. She said, "Although I don't like war and killing, the Heaven Punishers have brought disaster to the heavens and slaughtered billions of creatures. They are the greatest evil in the world. If Father wants to uphold justice on behalf of Tianxing, I am willing to do my best to accompany you." Everyone expressed their opinions. Only White Dragon and Lon Kuan remained silent. Lon Kuan was taciturn by nature. Generally, he would not express his opinion when encountering such matters. However, the white dragon had always been lively and unrestrained. He furrowed his brows in thought and remained silent. This immediately attracted everyone's attention. Ji Tianqing looked sideways at him and asked, "White dragon, why aren't you speaking? Do you have any concerns?" The white dragon nodded with a solemn expression and replied, "Master, that is indeed the case. The Heaven Punishers have waged war against the 10,000 worlds and started a massacre. They deserve to die and must be eradicated. However, I am a little worried about how you will take the world of 5 elements away after merging with it. Firstly, the world of 5 elements has been sealed by the gods. It will be inconvenient for you to move about. Secondly, this star is extremely huge. With your current strength, you cannot merge it into your divine body and move about as you wish. Thirdly, the star needs a terrifying amount of energy to fly through the void. How will you obtain the energy?" White Dragon's words stunned everyone for a moment, and they all quieted down. Ji Tianqing also nodded slightly and said calmly, "That's right. You have hit the nail on the head. I have considered all these problems. Although the world of 5 elements has been sealed by the gods, the golden light barrier is very special. Its main function is not to seal the world of 5 elements or to restrict its movement and development. It is to protect this world. Not only can it protect the world of 5 elements from being invaded, but it can also prevent the world of 5 elements from being damaged and shrinking. As for the second point, you are right. The world of 5 elements is so huge. I have not reached the monarch god realm yet. I cannot merge it into my body and carry it around. However, I can control the power of the world to move the world of 5 elements and fly through the void. Simply put, I can use this star as a battleship and a flying divine weapon. I can drive it through the void." Ji Tianqing answered logically. The white dragon listened and nodded. However, he was still a little worried. He continued, "I understand what you mean, Master. However, there is still one problem that worries me. You can release the power of the world of 5 elements and fly through the void. It is a feasible method. However, the world of 5 elements has been destroyed and its power is limited. If it is not replenished, its power will be exhausted before it can fly out of the purple cloud star zone. The world will be even more desolate. The Heaven Punisher's nest is in another star zone far away. You have to think of a way to replenish the power of the world of 5 elements. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for us to cross a few star zones and fly to the Heaven Punisher's nest." With that said, White Dragon paused for a moment before adding, "Let me give everyone a real example. In the universe of the dimension there's a planet named Earth. That's my hometown. A terrifying solar storm broke out in the star zone where Earth Star was located, destroying countless stars. Earth Star was in danger. Therefore, the whole world did their best to gather all the nuclear energy and built hundreds of energy stations on Earth Star. When those energy stations were all activated, they could release an extremely powerful thrust, allowing Earth Star to break free from its gravitational orbit and fly into the depths of the universe to avoid the solar storm. 10 years later, Earth Star finally flew out of that star zone and avoided the solar storm. However, Earth Star's power was exhausted and it could not be replenished. It lost its power and floated in the void. An invisible gravitational force dragged Earth Star and it kept accelerating in the void. In the end, it collided with another star like a meteor. Earth Star was destroyed and billions of living beings died. I was the only survivor. I passed through the black hole formed by the collision of stars and came to this world. Later on, I met Master." After the white dragon finished speaking, everyone fell silent and looked at Ji Tianqing. Everyone finally understood that the white dragon had such a thrilling and bizarre experience. At the same time, they also understood that if this problem could not be solved, it would be very troublesome. Ji Tianqing's plan would also be affected and difficult to carry out. Chapter 2650. Everyone's hearts were filled with worry. However, Ji Tianqing smiled confidently. He smiled and waved his hand, indicating that they did not need to worry. "Everyone, don't worry. If Bai Long can think of this problem, how can I not be prepared?" As he said that, he looked at Bai Long with a smile and asked, "Bai Long, do you still remember the divine technique that I created back then, the star attraction art?" Bai Long's body trembled and he immediately guessed something. Feeling enlightened, he quickly nodded in response. "Of course I remember. Master, do you mean?" Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. "That's right. The star attraction art is only the first step of the divine path cultivation. The second technique is called the star refining art. Those who have reached the divine Lord realm can cultivate the star refining art and refine an entire star to absorb energy from it. Although I have not reached the divine Lord realm, the five elements world is the main world that has existed since time immemorial. When I travel in the void, I can use the star refining art and refine other stars with the five elements world to absorb energy. In the vast starry sky there are billions of stars. 99% of them are lifeless and useless stars. They can be used to replenish the five elements world's energy. Hearing him say this, everyone suddenly came to a realization and immediately showed an expression of relief. That's great. I guessed it long ago. Since Brother Tianxing has made this decision, he must have thought it through thoroughly. Father is indeed far-sighted. Now we have nothing to worry about. We can attack the Heaven Punisher race without worry. Using the five elements world as a battleship and controlling an entire star to travel in the starry sky. Just thinking about it makes me excited. Only old G has the strength and boldness to do such an earth-shattering thing. That's right. Others use battleships and flying divine artifacts to travel in the void. But he's controlling an entire star to fly. Everyone discussed among themselves. Their expressions and tones were very relaxed. Ji Tianxing did not waste any more time. He immediately ordered, since no one has any objections, this matter is settled. Cultivate in peace. I will control the five elements world to travel. I will summon you when I need you. Everyone nodded to show that they understood and then dispersed. Only Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao and Ji Ku were left. The two women stood beside him and looked at him with concern. They asked, Tianxing, are you confident? Controlling the entire world and flying through the void not only drains a huge amount of energy, it also drains a lot of mental energy. Big brother Tianxing, don't be anxious about this. Take your time. Ji Tianxing held their hands and said with a smile, don't worry. I have experience with similar things. I won't make a mistake and there won't be any danger. He comforted Yun Yao and Ji Ku before they dispelled their worries. After that, the two women continued to cultivate in the distorted spacetime while he left the divine tower alone. Chua. With a flash of white light, Ji Tianxing returned to the entrance of the Yin-Yang realm and landed on the top of a barren mountain. With a thought, his body emitted a sacred golden light and he disappeared from the spot. In the next moment he passed through billions of miles and returned to the core of the five-elemental world, the golden ball of light. Standing on the top of the golden mountain, he released his mental energy and connected to the world meridian to move the five-elemental world. This time I will take the entire five-elemental world and cross the endless void to seek revenge from the Heaven Punisher race. The billions of living beings in the five-elemental world won't notice anything amiss. They will never think that their lives and the survival of the five-elemental world will be in my hands. I hope that everything will go smoothly and nothing will go wrong. Ji Tianxing murmured a few words and started to control the power of the world to move the five-elemental world. Suddenly, the entire five-elemental world underwent a subtle change. The planet with a diameter of 1 billion miles released a vast amount of power of the world. It penetrated the golden god seal and ignited a sacred golden flame. Buzz. Buzz. The gigantic planet started to tremble and let out a low muffled sound that reverberated in the void. Golden flames rose from the southern half of the golden light barrier that enveloped the five-elemental world and fiercely attacked the void. A huge vortex immediately formed in the dark and cold void, setting off invisible waves of air. Whoosh! An unparalleled power finally shook the entire five-elemental world. The gigantic planet started to move slowly toward the north. Ji Tianxing had already merged with the entire world, so he could naturally sense that the five-elemental world had started to fly and was gradually increasing in speed. He was gratified and his heart was filled with anticipation. He didn't dare to relax at all. He continued to control the other half of the five-elemental world and unleashed a vast amount of power of the world. As the power of the world became stronger, the golden flames that spewed out from the southern half of the world also became more violent and monstrous. The shining golden planet started to speed up and fly toward the depths of the void. The five-elemental world still maintained its balance and wasn't affected at all. The hundreds of races and billions of living beings living on the five continents didn't feel any discomfort. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing felt more at ease. reality proved that his plan was feasible. The entire planet became his flying device and started to travel through the void. 10 breaths, 100 breaths, 15 minutes passed. After an hour, the flying speed of the 5-elemental world had already reached a terrifying level. The shining golden planet, surrounded by soaring golden flames, dragged a long tail of flames, and rushed into the depths of the void at the speed of a heavenly god-class battleship. Even though the potential of the 5-elemental world wasn't limited to this, if Zhou Xian continued to use the power of the world, the flying speed of the 5-elemental world could double. But he knew very well that doing so was very dangerous. It would accelerate the consumption of the power of the world and cause obvious changes to the 5-elemental world, accelerating its decline and destruction. His journey was still very far away. For the sake of a long-term plan, he had to control the speed of the 5-elemental world. Unknowingly, 3 months passed. The 5-elemental world had already left its original position and advanced 1 billion miles into the depths of the void. The gigantic golden planet flickered with dazzling golden light, dragging a golden tail of flames that was millions of miles long as it sped through the starry sky. If a god saw this scene, he would definitely turn pale with fright and be dumbfounded. Now the flying speed of the 5-elemental world was very stable. In the nearby void there weren't any stars that could release gravity. Therefore the resistance of the 5-elemental world flying in the void was very small, and the consumption of power of the world wasn't much. Zhou Xian had been in the world core all this time, controlling the power of the world and observing the situation in the void through the entire world. If there were stars, meteorites, or void storms ahead, he would definitely avoid them in advance to avoid unnecessary danger. The plan was on the right track. In the short term, the 5-elemental world was safe. Zhou Xian's worries gradually disappeared, and his tense mind also slowly relaxed. End of this chapter. Chapter 2651. Unknowingly, a year had passed. The 5 elements world had flown 5 billion kilometers in the void. Compared to the 5 elements world size, it had only moved 5 body lengths. After all, it was impossible to find a second star as big as the 5 elements world even if one searched the universe in the 3,000 worlds. Most of the mortal worlds had a diameter of no more than 300 million kilometers. The 5 elements world was several times bigger than those stars. During the journey, Zhou Xian had nothing to do, so he began to clean the impurities on the golden light barrier. The golden barrier that enveloped the world of 5 elements was broken and cracked by the star cores and the debris of the divine warships. When the Heaven Punishers invaded, they had entered the 5 elements world through these spatial cracks and gaps. Zhou Xian controlled the power of the world to clean up the meteorites, stars, and wreckage of the divine warships. Then he used the power of the world to repair the holes and cracks in the golden light barrier. This way the golden light barrier was intact and had no more holes. Even if an enemy invaded, they would not be able to find a breakthrough. The safety of the 5 elements world was further improved and strengthened. Other than that, Zhou Xian also discovered 4 stars on the way. Those 4 stars were considered the closest stars to the 5 elements world. They were all barren and lifeless stars. Moreover, the 4 stars were very small, only a few million kilometers in diameter. Compared to the 5 elements world, it was like comparing a watermelon to a sesame seed. The 5 elements world flashed with golden light as it flew past the stars with a trail of flames. The terrifying airflow swept the 4 stars, causing them to roll for a long time in the void before stopping. Zhou Xian did not care about those 4 tiny stars. He did not even think about using the star refining art. However, as time passed, he could clearly sense that the 5 elements world's power was beginning to decline. The year of flying had consumed a lot of the 5 elements world's power. He had to find a suitable star and devour it as soon as possible to replenish the 5 elements world's power. Otherwise, the 5 elements world would decline in 2 or 3 years. While controlling the stars to travel, Zhou Xian also observed the surrounding void to find a suitable target. In the blink of an eye, another year had passed. The 5 elements world flew out for another 5 billion miles, truly leaving the previous void. During this process, the 5 elements world passed by 3 relatively large stars. The 3 planets were mortal worlds with billions of living beings and martial god realm experts living in them. In order not to alarm the three worlds, he controlled the five elements world to slightly change its direction and maintain a distance from the three worlds. Therefore, even if the martial gods of the three worlds saw it, they would only think it was a meteor. It has been 2 whole years. The power of the five elements world has been constantly weakening, and the continents have all changed. The boundless heavenly oceans surged violently, and the spiritual energy of the continents became thinner. Countless forests and grasslands were disappearing, and large numbers of birds and beasts were dying. If I still can't find a suitable star, the deterioration of the five elements world will accelerate. Ji Tianxing silently calculated, feeling more and more anxious. Finally, one day 3 months later, suddenly he saw a dark silver star appear in the void to his left. Although it was very far away, he could estimate that the diameter of the star was at least tens of millions of miles. The star was somewhat dim and lifeless. Moreover, there was no divine light shield formed by the heavenly Tao law. It was obviously a lifeless star. It's neither big nor small and there's no life, but it contains powerful star power. This is it. Ji Tianxing made up his mind and hurriedly changed the direction of the five elements world's flight, flying toward that star. 4 months later, the five elements world gradually approached the barren star. When it was 50 million miles away from the barren star, Ji Tianxing withdrew the world power. The five elements world no longer spewed out golden divine flames, and its flying speed began to slow down. Although it lost the impetus of the world power, it still maintained a strong inertia and approached the barren star. Under Ji Tianxing's precise control, the five elements world flew near the barren star and gradually stopped. The two stars did not collide, otherwise the consequences would be unimaginable. The distance between the two shrank to tens of thousands of miles under Ji Tianxing's subtle control. Compared to the five elements world with a diameter of 1 billion miles, this distance was already very small. Looking from a distance, the two stars seemed to be close together. After the five elements world stabilized, Ji Tianxing flew out. Zhoush. He easily passed through the golden light barrier, flew across tens of thousands of miles of the void, and landed on the barren star. Before devouring the barren star, he had to personally explore it and confirm that the barren star could replenish the power of the five elements world. Ji Tianxing landed on the surface of the barren star, standing on a vast dark silver land. This dark silver land was directly exposed to the void, cold and hard. Looking around, there were undulating mountain peaks and layers of silver rock layers. Ji Tianxing released his divine sense and invaded the dark silver land, spreading out in all directions, enveloping a radius of 90,000 miles. Soon he found the result. This dark silver land contained an incomparably rich amount of metal and mineral resources, as well as a vast amount of star energy. He used the law of Earth again to observe the land within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. The result was the same. Ji Tianxing breathed a sigh of relief and revealed a satisfied smile. Very good. This star is a very suitable tonic for the five elements world. After saying that, he was about to use the star refining art to control the five elements world to devour the barren star. But at this moment, a dazzling purple-red brilliance came from the void 100,000 miles away, as fast as a stream of light. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing stopped using the art and looked over with a frown. The familiar purple-red brilliance made him vaguely guess what it was. A moment later, when the purple-red brilliance quickly approached, he gradually saw the objects in the brilliance. It was actually more than 30 mountain-sized battleships. Each battleship was more than 10,000 feet long and had a strange and ferocious appearance. They emitted crimson or purple brilliance. Ji Tianxing immediately raised his eyebrows, and a playful sneer appeared on his lips. Battleships of the Heaven Punisher race. The Heaven Punisher race's claws are long enough to reach here. It seems that after occupying the Purple Cloud planet, he has also occupied more than half of the Purple Cloud star zone in the past decade. From this point alone, Ji Tianxing could predict that the current situation in the Purple Cloud star zone must be very bad. Since he had encountered the Heaven Punisher race's fleet here, of course, he would not let it go. Moreover, he was also puzzled and curious. Why did the Heaven Punisher race's fleet not invade the other worlds but come to this barren star? End of chapter. Chapter 2652. Zhoush. Soon, the heaven-conquering fleet arrived before Ji Tianxing and stopped on the dark silver land 100 miles away. The leading warship was slightly larger and shone with a faint purple light. It was a lower true god. The other 32 black warships were ordinary high-grade martial god realm warships. Many battleships spread out and formed a huge encirclement around Zhi Tianxing. Zhi Tianxing stood there with an indifferent look on his face. His hands were behind his back and he looked calm and composed. Soon more than 30 martial gods of the heaven-punishing race in golden armor flew out of the battleships. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. 33 heaven-defying martial gods gathered around Zhi Tianxing and stared at him coldly. The leading martial god in golden armor was at LV2 True God Realm. He was obviously a general or commander with a high status. The 32 martial gods in golden armor were the captains of the warships. The general in golden armor pointed at Zhi Tianxing with his black broadsword and shouted arrogantly, "Kid, who are you? Why did you break into the forbidden area of my tribe? Also, what's with that golden star?" Zhi Tianxing understood what was going on when he heard the general in golden armor. The other party had been on the barren planet and had rushed over to check the situation when he saw the golden five elements world approaching. Zhi Tianxing asked in the language of the heaven-conquering tribe, "You don't have the right to know who I am. I have a question and you'd better answer it honestly. Why are you on this barren planet? Did the great emperor of the heaven-conquering tribe give you a mission?" The general in golden armor and the captains were stunned. They looked at each other and started to discuss among themselves. Who is that guy? How can he be so calm when he is surrounded by us? I don't know who he is. I can't see through his cultivation level. He might be an expert. He knows about our tribe's great emperor. How does he know we have a mission? It seems that the kid is not only powerful but he also knows our tribe well. Be careful. Although many of the captains had lowered their voices and were whispering to each other. However, Zhi Tianxing heard it loud and clear, and the sneer on his face became even more pronounced. The leader of the golden armored generals furrowed his brows and roared, "Brat! Don't forget your current situation. Don't be so arrogant. Now that you've fallen into our hands, your life and death are no longer up to you. You better answer my questions honestly. Perhaps I can spare your lowly life." Zhi Tianxing shook his head with a sneer and sighed, "Since you insist on courting death, I will fulfill your wish. If you don't want to answer my question, then I'll get the answer myself." As his voice fell, his divine thought moved, controlling the five elements world to release dozens of world forces. Instantly, more than 60 beams of golden light shot out from the world of five elements tens of thousands of miles away, bombarding the 33 heaven-conquering battleships. Swish, swish. Before the captains could react, more than 60 golden pillars of light tore through the void and struck the 33 warships. Bang 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 bang. A series of loud bangs reverberated in the void. The 33 warships were blasted into smithereens and were wrapped in dazzling golden light, causing a shocking storm to blow in the void. There were hundreds of heaven-conquering warriors in each warship and all of them had the strength of a martial sage. However, the heaven-conquering warriors did not have the chance to retaliate and were destroyed along with the warships. When the deafening bangs gradually dissipated, hundreds of millions of pieces of the warships were scattered on the silver ground. From the beginning to the end, Zhi Tianxing stood on the ground with his hands behind his back and a sneer on his face. He did not move a finger nor did he look back. The 33 warships and more than 3,000 heaven-conquering warriors had been destroyed. The captains and the golden armored generals were scared out of their wits. They stood rooted to the ground, dumbfounded and horrified. Oh my God! What is he? He didn't do anything and he destroyed our warships? That's terrifying. We can't afford to offend this guy. We're finished. We're all finished. After a moment of silence, many captains screamed and screamed in despair. The golden armored general's face was as white as a sheet. He looked at Zhi Tianxing in fear and asked in a trembling voice, Who are you? Do you know the consequences of going against my tribe? I advise you not to act rashly. Otherwise, my tribe's great emperor will travel across the galaxy to kill you." The golden armored general was obviously a coward. In his fear he could only rely on the heaven-conquering emperor. However, he had miscalculated. The golden armored general did not expect the white-robed young man to be so terrifying. The heaven-conquering emperor? You will travel across the galaxy to kill me? Zhi Tianxing raised his eyebrows and laughed mockingly. I was just about to look for him. I was afraid that he wouldn't dare to come. As he spoke, he stepped into the void and charged toward the captains. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. His figure flickered continuously in the void. In the short span of a breath, he had actually twisted and turned 32 times and delivered 32 punches. In the next moment, he returned to his original spot and stood in the void with his hands behind his back. He was still calm and composed. With a cold smile on his face, it was as if he had done nothing. However, the 32 golden-armored captains were like stone sculptures, their bodies stiff and rooted to the spot. Then, there was a series of muffled explosions. The 32 golden-armored captains exploded almost at the same time. Their bodies exploded into pieces of flesh and blood that filled the sky. The blood and debris mixed together and fell on the silver ground. The pungent smell of blood filled the air. The captains of these martial god realm ships had died just like that for no apparent reason. They did not fight back or dodge. They did not even have time to scream. The golden-armored general was stunned again. His eyes were wide open as he stared at Zhi Tianxing in horror. Unparalleled fear swept through his body. He felt chills all over and trembled violently. His knees softened, then he kneeled on the ground and kowtowed 3 times to Zhi Tianxing, causing a series of loud thuds. When he lifted his head, his hair was disheveled. His face was covered in blood and tears. He looked extremely pathetic. His voice trembled as he shouted in fear, "Senior, I was ignorant and offended you. Please be magnanimous and let me go like a fart. As long as you are merciful, I will tell you everything I know." When Zhi Tianxing saw this, he frowned and said with a strange expression, "You have no backbone. Are you really a general of the heaven-conquering tribe? I have fought with the heaven-conquering tribe for decades and killed many of their elites. However, I have never seen such a coward like you." Chapter 2653. All along, the Heaven Punishers had been synonymous with strength and cruelty. They worshipped violence and power, and they loved war and plunder. Zhi Tianxing even suspected that the words, surrender, did not exist in the dictionary of the Heaven Punishers. Regardless of whether it was the black-armored warrior or the golden-armored captain, they would rather die in battle than surrender. But now he actually met a spineless weakling. This had broadened his horizons and increased his knowledge. It can be seen that cowardice is everywhere. No matter how powerful a race is, there will always be some cowards. Zhi Tianxing muttered to himself. At this moment, a young man's voice came from the void behind him. "Master, you can't say that. The Heaven Punishers are actually very domineering. There are basically no cowards who are afraid of death. It's just that you're too strong and too ruthless. You scared that guy silly. You're already the lord of an eternal star. When you attack, you have to consider the feelings of ordinary gods. Even the imperial tutor of the Heaven Punishers would be scared witless, let alone a small general." As soon as he finished speaking, a handsome and devilishly handsome young man in a snow-white robe appeared behind Zhi Tianxing. It was Bai Long. He bowed to Zhi Tianxing and said with a smile, "Master, let me deal with this weakling. I don't want to dirty your hands." Zhi Tianxing glanced at him and said with a smile, "You brat, why aren't you in seclusion in the divine pagoda? Why are you here to flatter your master?" Bai Long was not embarrassed. He answered with a smile, "I just broke through to the 3rd level of the true god realm. I've been in seclusion for so long that I'm about to fall ill. I came out to get some fresh air and have some fun." Zhi Tianxing nodded and said, "All right, I'll let you deal with him." "Great. Thank you, master." Bai Long was overjoyed. He quickly rolled up his sleeves and flew to the golden-armored general. The golden-armored general knelt on the ground and secretly sized him up. He was very nervous. Bai Long stretched out his left hand and pressed on the golden-armored general's head. He took out a black knife the length of a chopstick and waved it in front of the golden-armored general. "Dude, let me tell you a secret. Before I started practicing martial arts, I was an anatomist for a period of time." Seeing the confused look on the golden-armored general's face, he explained in detail, "The person who dissects the corpses. When it was necessary for work, a corpse had to be dissected into more than 900 pieces. I learned it in 2 months, but I only worked for half a year before I was fired. Do you know why?" The golden-armored general shook his head. His eyes were filled with vigilance. White Dragon sneered and explained, "Because I like to study the limits. I always try to dissect a corpse into more than 1,000 pieces, more than 3,000 pieces and even more than 6,000 pieces. For a non-humankind being like you, who has a special body structure, I think you can be dissected into at least 10,000 pieces. Just thinking about it makes me excited. The golden armored general immediately understood. His body stiffened and a mournful expression appeared on his face. My lord, please, have mercy. As long as you ask, I will definitely answer. Bai Long smiled in satisfaction. He patted his face with the small origin stone knife and praised, "Very good, you know your place. Tell me, why did you come to this planet and what mission are you carrying out?" The golden armored general did not dare to hide anything. He hurriedly replied, "My lord, I am General Yuan Qi under the command of the Southern Expedition Marshal. 5 years ago I led a fleet and occupied Ryuan world. Later the great emperor of my race issued an order saying that our race was short on resources and urgently needed large amounts of divine-level ores and metals to forge weapons and warships. The great emperor ordered all the fleets to send manpower to various large worlds and planets to search for metals and ores. At the same time, the great emperor also mentioned a type of black boundless divine stone and ordered us to search for it at all costs." At this point, General Yuan Qi looked up at White Dragon. Seeing that White Dragon was smiling and had no intention of cutting his flesh, he was slightly relieved. He continued, "Ryuan world was short on resources, so I left most of the fleet to guard it and search for ores and metals. I personally led 32 warships to this star closest to the Ryuan world to plunder resources and search for boundless divine stones." At this point, Ji Tianxing and White Dragon roughly understood what was going on. Ji Tianxing sneered inwardly. Great Emperor Tian Fa suffered a setback in the 5 Elements world, but he refused to give up. He fantasized that other worlds might have dawn stones as well. He did not know the secret of the 5 Elements world at all. Dawn stones are divine stones with heaven-defying effects. They only exist in the main world. How could they exist in a mortal world? At this point, White Dragon asked a few more questions. The golden armored general did not dare to hide anything and answered truthfully. Now that he knew everything he needed to know, the golden armored general was no longer of any use. However, White Dragon did not intend to let him go. He toyed with the dawn stone knife in his right hand and said with a smile, "Since you have performed well, I have decided to leave you with an intact corpse. Kowtow and thank me." The golden armored general felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He kowtowed in fear and begged for mercy. However, White Dragon was unmoved. He held the dawn stone knife in his right hand and stabbed it into the general's head. An incomparably violent divine energy burst forth from the dagger, immediately destroying the golden armored general's mind and organs. Blood spurted out of the golden armored general's orifices as he fell to the ground. After twitching a few times, he breathed his last. The Heaven Punishers were very tenacious. They would not die unless they were reduced to ashes. However, White Dragon's divine power had destroyed the golden armored general's brain and internal organs. His body had become an empty shell. How could he not die? As such, White Dragon had fulfilled his promise and left the golden armored general's corpse intact. After dealing with the golden armored general, White Dragon retrieved the dawn stone knife and turned to look at Ji Tianxing. He smiled awkwardly and explained, "Master, please forgive me for making the decision on my own and overstepping my boundaries." Although this person knelt and begged for mercy and told me the truth, he was still a heaven punisher. He had killed countless living beings and his hands were stained with blood. He had committed a heinous crime. This person cannot be left alive, but it is not suitable for you to attack, so Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "You don't need to say any more. You and I have a tacit understanding." White Dragon's eyes lit up and he said expectantly, "If that's the case, Master, you're crossing the void this time to massacre the world, just like in my previous life?" Ji Tianxing's expression was cold as he looked into the depths of the void. He nodded slightly and said, "That's right. It's not just the Heaven Punishers. There are also the divine beings behind the Heaven Punishers and the godly kings from the upper world. They will all suffer my wrath and revenge. The heavens are high and the divine beings stand in great numbers. In this life I will kill all of my enemies and dye the heavens red with blood." White Dragon's eyes burned with passion. His blood boiled and surged. "Good. Disciple is willing to follow Master again to conquer the heavens and kill our way back to the godly world. Those who were once our enemies will become the souls of the dead under our swords." Chapter 2654. Exterminating the Heaven Punishers was easier said than done. However, it was extremely difficult to carry it out. Xianxia was already mentally prepared. This plan could not be completed in 3 to 5 years. Fortunately, he had enough time to deal with the Heaven Punishers while controlling the 5-elemental world. The most important thing now was to devour the barren star to replenish the 5-elemental world's energy. The white dragon returned to the 5-elemental world and entered the divine pagoda to cultivate. Xianxia controlled the 5-elemental world and released vast and mighty world energy. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Instantly, 90,000 golden pillars of light flew out of the 5-elemental world and connected to the barren star like densely packed tentacles. The 90,000 golden tentacles plunged deep into the barren star and started to absorb the star energy. The barren star started to tremble. The dark silver ground quickly cracked and collapsed. The endless star energy was like a silver stream of water that flowed into the 5-elemental world through the 90,000 tentacles. It was not just the star energy. Even the metal ores in the barren star were devoured by the 5-elemental world. As time passed, the 5-elemental world was replenished and started to return to normal. The strange phenomena in the continents and the sky sea also quickly calmed down. The barren star started to shrink and its power continued to weaken. The ground on the surface of the barren star was fragmented and quickly eroded. The useless rocks and sand turned into dust and powder that filled the sky and scattered in the void. 1 day, 5 days, 10 days, half a month passed. After 40 days, the barren star had clearly shrunk. 1/3 of it had been devoured. After 3 months, the barren star had shrunk again. More than half of its power had been lost. After 5 months, the barren star had shrunk by 80%. Its diameter was only 2 million miles. At that moment, the barren star's power had been devoured by the 5-elemental world. The entire star had become dim and lifeless, leaving behind only the useless sand and rocks. It was impossible for such a barren star to survive. At most, in another 100 years, the entire barren star would be eroded. It would turn into endless dust and disappear into the void. The barren star was completely destroyed. However, the 5-elemental world had devoured a vast amount of power. Not only had it replenished the power it had used in the past 2 years, but it also had a lot more. The power of the elemental world would increase by a lot, and the flying speed and time would also increase greatly. After star devouring ended, Xianxia controlled the 5 elements world and continued flying in the void. Shwa! Golden divine flames erupted from the 5 elements world, erupting with terrifying power, pushing it forward in the void. This time Xianxia was in no hurry to go to Zhixiao's star. He decided to make a trip to the Ruyuan world and get rid of the Heaven Punisher there. In any case, Ruyuan world was not far from here. They could reach it in half a month. Since he was passing by this place, he might as well destroy some of the heaven-destroying fleets and save the Ruyuan world. To deal with the heaven-punishing race, one had to accumulate many little drops into an ocean and continuously eat away at the heaven-punishing fleet. If they directly charged into the heaven-punishing clan's lair, it would be hard to predict who would win. 14 days later, the 5 elements world flew near the Ruyuan world and stopped. Yun Yao and Jiku stayed in the divine pagoda while the others followed him into the Ruyuan world to kill the heaven destroyers. Bai Long, Qian Yu and Hei Long were all warlike and were most interested in this kind of thing. Even Qin and Ye were determined to follow Xianxia into battle. Xianxia had originally refused. The 2 children were still young and had not reached the true immortal realm. However, Bai Long persuaded him. Master, junior brother Wu Hin and junior sister Wu Shuang have extraordinary talents. They are unparalleled geniuses. Even though they are only level 8 martial gods, their combat strength is very strong. They are said to be invincible among those below the true immortal realm. Moreover, they have been living in the divine pagoda since they were young. They have not experienced the hardships and difficulties of the martial path, nor have they experienced real battles. They are like flowers in a greenhouse. They have strength and skills, but they have no experience in battle. In the future, they will definitely follow you to conquer the world and conquer the 10,000 realms. If you don't let them gain experience now, when will you wait? The heaven punishers in the Ruyuan world are all martial gods and martial sages. They will not be a threat to them. Moreover, we will all protect them. How can we let them be in danger? When Qin and Ye heard this, they nodded in agreement. Father, senior brother Bai Long is right. I have studied the world extensively and know thousands of martial techniques and divine techniques, but they are all armchair strategists. I have no real battle experience. Now we have traversed the void and fought everywhere. This is the best opportunity for us to gain experience. Ji Wuhan cupped his hands at Ji Tianxing and said seriously. Ji Wushuang also nodded in agreement and said, Father, Mother always said that you and her have walked a rough path together, experiencing who knows how many life and death crises. It is because of this that you were able to rise from the storm and become experts who can laugh at the world. Brother and I will eventually grow up. You and Mother can protect us for a while, but you cannot protect us forever. We have to grow up and learn to face the storm ourselves. When he heard this, Ji Tianxing revealed a gratified smile. He nodded and said, Chin, yeah, I am very gratified that you have both grown up. Since you want to gain experience, I will not stop you. You can go without worries. After this matter was discussed, Ji Tianxing led everyone and the few divine beasts into Ruyuan world. Ji Tianxing rode the black dragon, Lan Kuan carried the white dragon, Qian Yu carried Ji Wuhan, and the glazed fire dragon carried Ji Wushuang. For countless years, the glazed fire dragon had been following Yun Yao and cultivating in seclusion in the distorted space-time. It knew that its strength was weak and would drag everyone down, so it cultivated desperately and raised its strength at all costs. As a result, it was unknown and rarely showed its face in these years. Today it had reached the first level of the true God realm with Yun Yao's help. It felt that it was strong enough and could finally leave the mountain. That was why it followed Ji Wushuang. Not only now, but it would also follow Ji Wushuang in the future. Yun Yao and Ji Tianxing were happy to see this happen. After all, Yun Yao was very strong and did not need the glazed fire dragon's help. Ji Wushuang was still a little girl and did not have any combat experience. With the glazed fire dragon's guidance and care, everyone could be at ease. Not long after, everyone entered Ruyuan world. Ji Tianxing used a little trick and found the heaven-punishing divine palace built by the heaven-punishing tribe. This heaven-punishing divine palace hung high in the vast eastern sea. It was General Yuan Qi's residence and also the place where the Ruyuan world ruled. Tens of thousands of heaven-punishing warriors and dozens of captains were scattered across the 4 continents and firmly controlled Ruyuan world. The resources and treasures they plundered from the various continents would be sent to the heaven-punishing divine palace at regular intervals. As a result, the heaven-punishing divine palace had accumulated a huge amount of resources and treasures. There was also a large number of heaven-punishing elites guarding it. Chapter 2655. Ji Tianxing led the group and charged into the heaven-punishing divine palace. Sui Meng. There were more than 800 black-armored soldiers and 12 golden-armored captains guarding the heaven-punishing divine palace. The most powerful person was the vice-general of the fleet who had reached the 8th level of the martial god realm. These people could not stop the group's attack at all. After fighting for 15 minutes, more than 500 black-armored soldiers and 7 golden-armored captains were killed. Even the most powerful vice-general was severely injured by Ji Tianxing's punch. After that, Ji Tianxing stopped attacking. He used a powerful divine ability to set up a sealing formation that enveloped the entire heaven-punishing divine palace. In this way, no one could escape from the heaven-punishing divine palace. Without his permission, even the communication jade slips could not be sent out. After doing this, he stood at the peak of the heaven-punishing divine palace and watched the battle calmly. Inside the heaven-punishing divine palace, Bai Long, Qian Yu, Black Dragon, Ji Wuhan, and Ji Wushuang were fighting bravely. Of course, Bai Long was being cautious. He did not use his full strength in case he killed all the experts of the heaven-punishing divine palace. While he pretended to attack, he was secretly observing Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang. This was the first time the siblings were fighting against the heaven-punishing divine palace, so they were very serious and cautious. The two of them held the Source Stone Divine Sword and kept using their divine skills to fight against the heaven-punishing divine palace. Their experiences with swords and sabers as well as bloody battles allowed them to grow quickly and accumulate combat experience. They tested the results of their cultivation through actual combat, constantly modifying and perfecting their divine skills and sword techniques. They improved rapidly. Half an hour later, all the black-armored soldiers were killed. Only the 5 golden-armored captains and the vice-general were left. They were all severely injured. At this time, Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang requested that they take care of the 6 experts of the heaven-punishing divine palace. Bai Long, Qianyu, Black Dragon, and the glazed fire dragon retreated from the battle and watched from the sidelines to support the siblings. An intense and exciting battle immediately unfolded. Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang joined forces to deal with the 6 heaven-punishing divine palaces fearlessly. The two of them cooperated well, advancing and retreating in an orderly manner. All kinds of sword arts and divine abilities were at their fingertips, and they used them very skillfully. As a result, the two of them had the upper hand. They had been suppressing the 6 heaven-defying martial gods and forcing them to back off. In just 15 minutes, the 5 captains were killed by the two of them. The remaining deputy general was also severely injured by the two of them and was on the verge of death. Finally, Ji Wuhan sent the deputy general flying with a single slash of his sword, cutting off half of his body. His figure flashed and he was about to chase after the deputy general and kill him with his sword. At this moment, Ji Tianxing, who had been watching the battle from the top of the divine palace, suddenly spoke. "Qianxin, stop." Ji Wuhan had already appeared in front of the deputy general, and the divine sword in his hand had already reached the top of his head. But in that split second he stopped without hesitation and drew back his divine sword. Ji Wuhan turned to look at the peak of the divine palace. He bowed to Ji Tianxing and said, "Father, please instruct me." Ji Tianxing nodded. He strode across the sky and landed on the plaza. He came to Ji Wuhan's side and looked down at the severely injured and dying deputy general. He said, "Let him live for now. Father has other plans." Ji Wuhan was exceptionally intelligent. He immediately guessed his father's intentions and bowed before taking his leave. The battle ended. Ji Tianxing looked at the deputy general covered in blood and ordered, "In your name, send out a communication jade slip and summon all the captains and warriors back." Hearing this, the deputy general's body stiffened. Anger and hatred surged in his eyes. "You're so vicious. I'd rather die than obey. Don't even think about getting your way." Ji Tianxing was too lazy to talk nonsense. He gave Bai Long a look. Bai Long immediately understood. He walked to the deputy general with a cold smile on his face. He took out a small boning knife forged from an origin stone and began to torture him. Skinning, pulling out tendons and boning were originally extremely cruel punishments. They were often accompanied by bloody scenes that made people unable to look at them directly. However, in Bai Long's hands these things became like an art. His torture techniques had been brought to the point of perfection. His movements were agile and elegant, as smooth as flowing water. The skin that was peeled off, the tendons that were pulled out, and the bones that were picked out were all intact. The most terrifying thing was that Bai Long's eyes and expression were extremely focused. It didn't seem like he was carrying out a punishment, but more like he was carving wood or jade. The deputy general suffered inhumane pain and torture. He fainted several times but was awakened by the stimulation. He had fallen into Bai Long's hands. Even death had become an extravagant hope. No matter how tenacious his willpower was, it couldn't withstand such devastation and gradually collapsed. At this moment, Bai Long's eyes were focused on him. He muttered to himself, "A bone sculpture of 2 dragons playing with a pearl? Or a flower pot of a flood dragon emerging from the sea? Otherwise, I can carve a painting of all living beings worshipping the gods and give it to master as a carpet. That's not bad." Not far away, Ji Tianxing, Ji Wuhan, and Ji Wushuang all revealed a somewhat strange expression. Especially Ji Tianxing. Her small hands were cold as she held onto Ji Tianxing's arm in fear. She didn't dare to look at Bai Long's movements. It was too terrifying. Bai Long's focused and serious expression formed a strong contrast with his torturing movements. It sent chills down one's spine. When the deputy general heard this, his eyes widened in horror. His willpower was completely swallowed by fear. He didn't dare to resist anymore. He hurriedly kowtowed and begged for mercy. He cried out hoarsely, "Let me go. I'm begging you, I'm willing to send a message. I only ask that you give me a quick death." As he spoke, he took out a few communication jade slips with trembling hands and sent messages to the heaven punishers of the 4 continents. His goal was achieved. Bai Long put away the knife with a smile and blasted the deputy general into pieces with a punch. "Done. Pack up." He clapped his hands nonchalantly and returned to his usual carefree and unrestrained appearance. However, everyone had seen his terrifying methods. When they saw him change his attitude so easily, they felt their scalps go numb. When Bai Long walked toward Ji Tianxing, Ji Wuxuang subconsciously took 2 steps back and hid behind Ji Tianxing. She stared at Bai Long with her big eyes. Bai Long scratched his head awkwardly and said with a shy smile, "Little junior sister, what are you doing? Don't you recognize your eldest senior brother?" Ji Wuxuang pouted and said angrily, "Humph. Eldest senior brother, you're usually so carefree and easygoing. I didn't expect you to be an executioner. My brother and I won't play with you anymore. You pervert big devil." Bai Long was even more embarrassed. He explained with a smile, "Little junior sister, don't misunderstand. How can your eldest senior brother be a big devil? A great man once said that you should treat your own people as warm as spring and treat your enemies as cold as winter." Ji Wuxuang didn't listen to his explanation. She pulled Ji Wuhan and turned to leave. Bai Long stood there awkwardly and swallowed the rest of his words. Ji Tianxing couldn't help but laugh. "Serves you right. Who asked you to show off in front of the children? Now you've left them with psychological trauma. Let's see how you're going to maintain your image in the future." Bai Long immediately cried and said, "Master, I'm innocent." Chapter 2656. To them, Bai Long's act of destroying a heaven punisher was not considered excessive. After all, they were all experts who had walked through mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Their hands were stained with blood and had slaughtered millions of lives, let alone a heaven punisher. In this martial Dao world where the strong preyed on the weak, all cultivators had no other choice. A cultivator's fate was to kill or be killed. However, Ji Wuhan and Ji Wuxuang were still very young and had not experienced any bloodshed. This was the first time they had seen such a scene, and it was done by their eldest senior brother personally. It was normal for them to be unable to accept it. After this small interlude ended, everyone went about their duties and carried out the next step of the plan. Bai Long brought Lan Kun, Qian Yu Black Dragon, and the glazed fire dragon to quickly search through the heaven-punishing divine palace's treasury. They transported countless resources and treasures to the 5 elements world and stored them in the divine pagoda. Ji Tianxing and his 2 sons remained in the heaven-punishing divine palace, waiting for the heaven punishers to return from the various continents. 2 days later, all the resources and treasures in the heaven-punishing divine palace had been emptied. 3 days later, the heaven-punishing battleships returned one after another. When those battleships entered the heaven-punishing divine palace, what awaited them was a merciless slaughter. Ji Tianxing presided over the heaven-punishing divine palace and did not need to do anything. Bai Long, the 4 divine beasts Ji Wuhan, Ji Wuxuang, and the others easily dealt with those battleships. In the next 5 days they successively destroyed more than 50 battleships. 54 golden armor captains and more than 4,000 black armor warriors were all smashed to pieces. After the battle ended, Ji Tianxing and the others left. In the Ryuan world, only 2 or 3 golden armor warriors and a few hundred black armor warriors were left. They were scattered across the various continents. Ji Tianxing did not have the time to kill them one by one. However, the billions of cultivators and leaders of the Ryuan world would not forgive them. A day later, the 5 elements world burst out with golden flames and continued to fly into the depths of the void. For the next 3 years, the 5 elements world continued to roam the void. In the process, Ji Tianxing and the others had rescued another 4 worlds, killing more than 300 captains of the heaven-conquering fleet and more than 30,000 heaven-conquering warriors. Of course, they also obtained a huge amount of cultivation resources and treasures. To Ji Tianxing, the people and divine beasts around him had already reached the true God realm. Even the weakest 2 children were at the peak of the martial God realm. They were not far from the true God realm. Therefore he only wanted deity-level pills, ores, metals and various other resources. Not only was he not interested in any cultivation resources below the divine level, he had no use for them at all. Not to mention, everyone had relied on origin stones to cultivate and increase their strength. The effects were very obvious. The god-level resources they had plundered could only be used as support. Most of them were used to concoct pills, refine tools, create talismans and set up formations. After saving the 4 worlds, Ji Tianxing found 2 more barren planets and devoured them. The two lifeless planets were both more than 10 million miles in diameter. It contained powerful star energy as well as incomparably rich resources and ores. After the five elements world devoured the two stars, not only was its power replenished, but it also increased its own power by 20%. In this way, the five elements world was also quietly growing and expanding. After the world energy became stronger, the spiritual chi and divine power of heaven and earth also began to increase. This caused the living beings in the five continents and the endless sky ocean to enter an era of rapid growth and strength. The martial Tao developed faster and geniuses and experts continued to emerge. Such a prosperous scene filled Ji Tianqing with hope for the future of the five elements world. If I travel in the void for 1,000 years and devour thousands of stars to replenish the five elements world's power, the five elements world would grow by 10 times. The five elements world will definitely grow dozens of times. I wonder if it can be restored to the main world? Of course, this was only his imagination. He also understood that it was not easy to restore the five elements world to the main world. He had merged with the five elements world. He had to at least recover to the divine king realm to restore the five elements world to its peak. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. Just 2 months after the 4th year, the five elements world was close to the purple cloud planet. After more than 10 years, Ji Tianqing was back again. This time it was completely different from the past. When the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher attacked, he was the loser and was forced to flee the purple cloud planet. But now he had seized the initiative and openly slaughtered his way back. He had guessed that the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher was not on the purple cloud planet. However, he believed that the purple cloud planet was the core of the purple cloud planet. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher would definitely send a large number of troops to guard it. This time he had returned not only to save the purple cloud planet but also to destroy the main force of the Heaven Punishing Fleet. At the same time he had to find a way to find out the exact location of the Heaven Punisher's base. The continents on the purple cloud planet were very peaceful. For 15 years, the purple cloud planet had been under the rule of the Heaven Punisher. The tens of billions of living beings on the 5 continents had become the slaves of the Heaven Punisher. They lived in darkness and misery. Under the command of the Heaven Punisher, they had to work day and night to extract resources for the Heaven Punisher and empty the resources of the continents. The Heaven Punisher fleet that guarded the 5 continents was the old subordinates of the Southern Expedition Marshal. Back then the Southern Expedition Marshal had been killed by Ji Tianqing. Almost half of the Southern Expedition Fleet's main force had been destroyed. However, there were still more than 100 battleships and more than 15,000 Heaven Punisher soldiers scattered on the planets around the Purple Cloud planet. After the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher had arrived, he had issued the Heaven Punisher order and gathered the old subordinates of the Southern Expedition Marshal to occupy the Purple Cloud planet. Now, the Heaven Punisher had built a magnificent Heaven Punisher divine palace in the vast sea of clouds. Under the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher's instructions, the most powerful General Meng he had been promoted to the position of the Southern Expedition Marshal temporarily. After the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher had left, General Meng he had stayed in the Divine Palace and controlled the entire Purple Cloud planet. He had great ambitions, and not only had he used his cruel tyranny to enslave the Purple Cloud planet, he had also chosen thousands of martial arts top powers from the 5 continents. General Meng he had used the Heaven Punisher's secret technique to refine thousands of martial artists into puppets. He had made them reach the martial sage realm and they had become the Black Armor Warriors. Then he had sent out many battleships to invade the worlds around the Purple Cloud planet. More than 10 years had passed and the 3 planets around the Purple Cloud planet had fallen under his control. General Meng He's forces had grown stronger and the resources and treasures that he had plundered from various places had piled up into a mountain in the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace. He had decided to spend a few decades to raise his strength to rank 5 True God Realm. He had also expanded the number of battleships under his command to more than 800 battleships. Even if he could not restore the Southern Expedition Fleet to its peak, he wanted to become the Southern Expedition Marshal. It was a pity that as the 5 Elements realm approached, General Meng He's plan had been ruined. Chapter 2657. When they were 30 million miles away from Purple Cloud planet, the 5 Elements world stopped. Then Ji Tianqing took out the Tianqing battleship and brought everyone to Purple Cloud planet. As usual, Yun Yao and Ji Ku stayed behind to guard the Five Elements world in case anything happened. White Dragon, Ji Wuhan, Ji Wushuang, Blue Kuan, Qian Yu, Black Dragon, and the Glazed Fire Dragon all followed Ji Tianqing. The Tianqing battleship flew for 10 days and arrived at Purple Cloud Planet. The dazzling purple divine light barrier still enveloped the entire Purple Cloud Planet and shone brightly in the void. Ji Tianqing took out the Burial of Heaven sword and slashed open the divine light barrier, creating a huge crack. Then the Tianqing battleship passed through the crack and entered Purple Cloud Planet. During the journey, Ji Tianqing used the law of Earth to investigate the situation of the Zero Mainland. In just 3 days he had thoroughly investigated the situation of the Zero Mainland. Only then did he know that the heaven-punishing Great Emperor was not on Purple Cloud Planet. Now it was General Meng He and his fleet that ruled the 5 mainlands of Purple Cloud Planet. Above the endless sea of clouds, General Meng He had built a new divine palace near the heaven-punishing divine palace. Ji Tianqing sneered when he heard this news. The heaven-punishing race is really forgetful. They actually built another divine palace in the Sea of Clouds. Looks like the situation from back then is going to repeat itself. Of course, the situation this time was different from back then. Back then, he had used the opportunity of the myriad countries' God Assembly to disguise himself as a heaven-punishing guard and sneak into the heaven-punishing divine palace. This time he did not need to go through so much trouble. He directly drove the Tianqing battleship to the heaven-punishing divine palace. Half a day later, the Tianqing battleship left a long white trail behind it as it sped through the Sea of Clouds and arrived outside the heaven-punishing divine palace. Although they were still a few hundred miles away, Ji Tianqing, White Dragon, and the others saw a magnificent palace in the Sea of Clouds. The palace was sparkling with a dazzling purple light, and was protected by a tens of miles in radius purple light screen. When the Tianqing battleship got closer, everyone could see clearly that there were many black armored guards walking around the heaven-punishing divine palace. It was a very tight security. "Master, what plans do you have?" Bai Long, who was steering the warship, turned to Ji Tianqing and asked for instructions. Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "No, let's just kill our way in." "Alright." Bai Long answered happily. He pushed the Tianqing battleship's speed to the max and slammed it into heaven-punishing God Palace. 2 breaths later, the pitch-black Tianqing battleship, which was burning with dazzling golden divine flames, crashed into the purple light shield. Boom! A deafening explosion resounded throughout the universe. The heaven-punishing divine palace, which was 50 miles wide, started to shake violently. Violent shockwaves mixed with purple light fragments spread out in all directions, covering the vast sea of clouds. This sudden change alarmed the entire heaven-punishing divine palace. More than a dozen patrol teams immediately pulled out their weapons and rushed to the plaza in front of the heaven-punishing divine palace. When more than 100 black armored guards arrived at the plaza, they saw that the pitch-black battleship had disappeared. 4 strange-looking cultivators and 4 huge divine beasts stood on the plaza, which was paved with golden divine stones. "Who are you? How dare you barge into our heaven-punishing divine palace? Do you want to die? What are you waiting for? Kill them." The captains of the guards roared furiously as they brandished their swords and sabers to attack. Instantly, more than 100 black armored guards waved their weapons and sent out saber lights and sword shadows that covered the sky. The saber lights and sword shadows poured down like a torrential rain, about to drown the 4 people and 4 divine beasts. At this moment, a handsome young man in snow-white robes and a young girl in a blue dress charged out with black divine swords in their hands. Sky Gap Flowing Light. Missing Moon Returning Star Sword. The young man and the young lady shouted angrily as they waved their swords and executed exquisite sword techniques. They sent out 9 sword lights that could split the heavens and earth and more than 60 icy blue sword lights. Bam, 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 bam. The attacks of the black armored guards were destroyed by the sword lights. In the next instant, many black armored guards were swept up by the sword lights and were smashed into pieces. The young man in white and the young lady in blue took 2 steps forward and waved their divine swords again. Sky Thunder Hurricane Sword. Half Moon Ice Sealing Sword. Suddenly 18 dazzling sword lights, accompanied by rolling thunder, wind and ice, poured down from the sky. Boom, 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 boom. The surviving black armored guards were killed on the spot. The plaza quieted down. The young man in white and the young lady in blue put away their divine swords and returned to the crowd calmly. Ji Tianxing smiled. Bai Long, Qian Yu, Hei Long and the glazed fiery dragon applauded. After 2 years of training, Qinshan and Yaya have accumulated some experience. Now, their control of their moves, strength and speed has reached a certain level. They have the demeanor of a peak martial god. Ji Tianxing commented with a smile on his face. At this moment, a group of overlords in golden armor flew through the gate and landed on the square. There was a total of 24 martial god realm captains in the fleet. They were all wearing golden armor and holding sabers, spears, swords and halberds in their hands. The leader was a middle-aged man in golden armor and a purple robe. He was burly and his face was majestic. His strength had reached LV4 true god realm. There was no doubt that he was General Meng He, the ruler of Purple Cloud Star. Of course, the experts in Purple Cloud Star all called him Marshal Meng He. Who are you? How dare you go against the Heaven Punisher tribe? Have you thought about how you are going to die? Marshal Meng He placed his left hand behind his back and held a black sword in his right hand. He pointed at Ji Tianxing and the others and shouted angrily. Ji Tianxing ignored him and ordered Bai Long and the 4 spiritual beasts beside him, "Go and guard the perimeter of the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace. Do not let anyone escape." Bai Long and the 4 spiritual beasts acknowledged the order and scattered to various parts of the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace. They worked together to set up a true god array and quickly sealed the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace. Seeing this, Great General Meng He and the 20 or so captains of the Heaven Punishing Fleet all wore confused and angry expressions. "Bastard! Ben Shuai is talking to you. If you don't answer, I will tear you into pieces." "What are those guys doing? Setting up an array? Are they afraid that we will escape from the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace? Haha, this is too funny. Are those guys crazy?" Many captains discussed among themselves and looked at Ji Tianxing and the others as though they were looking at fools. Ji Tianxing's face was still cold as he looked at Marshal Meng He calmly and said, "I will give you a chance. Immediately summon the Heaven Punisher fleet on the 5 continents. Ask them to hurry back to the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace and save your worthless life. I will give you 3 days to gather your men so that I can deal with all of you at once and not waste time." Chapter 2658. What a boastful man. Meng Heyun laughed suavely and bellowed with a ferocious expression. The 20-odd golden-armored captains were also stunned for a moment before bursting into laughter. "Ha! What did that guy just say? Did I hear wrongly? He's too arrogant. He actually asked the marshal to gather his men so that he can take care of them all at once? Tisk tsk. Where did this lunatic come from? Is he tired of living? I dare to bet that this guy will be in big trouble if he falls into the marshal's hands. How many pieces do you think the marshal will cut him into before he can vent his anger?" Everyone had a gloating, ferocious and cruel expression on their faces. At this time, more than 400 heaven-punishing guards in black armor rushed to the square from all directions. Marshal Meng He pointed his sword at Ji Tianxing and bellowed contemptuously, "Little bastard, you must have lost your mind. How dare you spout such nonsense in front of Ben Shuai? No matter which world you came from, no matter what your motive is, Ben Shuai will grind your bones to dust as a warning to others." As his voice fell, he waved the heavy sword in his hand and ordered the black-armored guards, "Capture them for this marshal. Remember to keep them alive." Over 400 black-armored guards let out a thunderous roar one after another. They leaped into the air, slashing and thrusting their swords and saber lights that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, rushing towards Ji Tianxing and his son. Ji Tianxing's expression did not change in the face of the overwhelming crimson light blades and the siege of the 400 black-armored guards. He did not even bother to look at the guards. His eyes were fixed on Marshal Meng He, who was 10 miles away. When the light blades were about to fall, he raised his arms and waved his wide sleeves in all directions, shooting out a divine light that covered the sky. Swoosh, swoosh. The dazzling golden divine light spread in all directions like a canopy. Following that, a series of muffled explosions resounded throughout the world. The crimson light blades that covered the sky were instantly shattered by the golden canopy. As for the 400 black-armored guards, They were instantly smashed into pieces by the golden canopy. They turned into powder and blood that scattered in the sky. If the golden divine light was the scorching sun, then the 400 black-armored guards were the ice and snow. Under the scorching sun, the ice and snow melted instantly. In just 2 short breaths, the 400 black-armored guards had all disappeared. Only a rain of blood, swords, and scraps of armor were left as they fell onto the square. Such a shocking scene caused Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang to stare with their eyes wide open, and they revealed dense shock and adoration in their eyes. It was extremely rare for them to see Ji Tianxing fight against powerful enemies. Only now did they know that their father was actually so powerful. In the blink of an eye, more than 400 martial sages. This was a true god. Marshal Meng He and the 24 golden armored generals were also dumbfounded. Their bodies stiffened on the spot as if they had been petrified. Everyone's faces were filled with shock, and their hearts were filled with fear and shock. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would not have dared to believe that this was real. The other party had only waved his sleeves, and more than 400 guards had been destroyed. Not even their corpses were left? How terrifying was this power! Perhaps only the heaven-punishing emperor could have such means in the entire 3,000 worlds. The 24 captains started to tremble. Fear and the intention to retreat appeared in their eyes. Marshal Meng He, who was the leader, also felt his throat dry up and his legs turn to jelly. He swallowed his saliva and asked in a hoarse and trembling voice, "Who are you? Why are you going against my race? Do you know that my race has already conquered the universe and dominated the 5 major star zones?" Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly, "My surname is Tianxing. I once saved the Purple Cloud Planet and was worshipped as the Purple Cloud Planet's master." Ji Tianxing? Marshal Meng He's body stiffened again. He exclaimed in shock, "You are the human who killed the Southern Expedition Marshal?" He was once a fierce general under the Southern Expedition Marshal. His seniority and status were higher than General Dragon subduing. Therefore he had heard of Ji Tianxing killing the Southern Expedition Marshal. Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a cold smile. He said in a playful tone, "Since you have heard of my deeds, you should know what you should do." Marshal Meng He's body trembled. Fear flashed in his eyes and his expression was uncertain. He was hesitating and struggling in his heart. "You asked me to gather all the captains and warriors at the heaven-punishing divine palace. Do you want to catch them all in one go?" He finally mustered up the courage to ask the question in his heart. Ji Tianxing did not deny it. He said with a smile, "That's right. You are a smart person." Marshal Meng He was silent for a while before he nodded with difficulty. "All right, I will listen to your orders. However, I have a request." Ji Tianxing shook his head gently and said indifferently, "A prisoner has no right to talk about requests." The humiliation caused Marshal Meng He's face to turn red. His eyes were filled with shame and anger. However, he suppressed his anger and slowly took out a few communication jade slips and started to send messages. Seeing this, the expressions of the more than 20 golden armored captains changed. Many of them tried to dissuade him. "No, Marshal Meng He, you can't do this. Stop. You're going to kill everyone." "Marshal, we have more people. Why should we be afraid of him? At most we will fight it out with him and perish together. We are the warriors of the heaven-punishing race. We would rather die than surrender. Marshal, how can you throw away the integrity of our race?" However, Marshal Meng He turned a deaf ear to everyone's dissuasion. Soon he finished making a few communication jade slips and waved his hand to send them out. Swish, 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 swish. 6 communication jade slips flew into the sky, passed through the purple light barrier, and disappeared into the horizon. Marshal Meng He looked up at the 6 communication jade slips flying away. An undetectable sneer flashed across his eyes. Clearly he was not really afraid. Neither was he really going to surrender. Not only had he sent a message to the captains of the 5 continents, but he had also sent a message to the heaven-punishing emperor. Arrogant human brat, do you think Ben Shuai will give in so easily? Ben Shuai not only sent the message to the heaven-punishing emperor, but he also left a backup plan in the divine palace. As long as Ben Shuai buys time for you, you will soon be in despair. Marshal Meng He lowered his head and laughed coldly in his heart. However, Ji Tianqing's voice rang out again. Actually, I wanted you to send a message to the heaven-punishing emperor as well. If he can come to the purple cloud planet, then I don't have to cross the void and go to the distant star region to find him. Ji Tianqing shook his head calmly and said regretfully, unfortunately, your life is too cheap. It is not worth it for him to cross the void to save you. Moreover, if he knows that I am the one who wants to kill you, he will not dare to save you. Hearing this, Marshal Meng He's body stiffened. The sneer in his eyes froze. He raised his head and looked at Ji Tianqing in shock. He could not help but ask, what do you mean? Ji Tianqing chuckled. You will understand soon enough. Chapter 2659. Ji Tianqing's words caused Marshal Meng He to be bewildered. He had a bad feeling about this. He could roughly guess why Ji Tianqing was so fearless and arrogant. It was most likely because Ji Tianqing was no weaker than the Heaven Punisher Great Emperor. Great General Meng He felt a chill run down his spine, and his heart fell into an ice cellar. He couldn't help but think, if his strength is really on par with the Great Emperor, will the trump card I left in the Divine Palace still be useful? At this moment the 24 captains of the golden armored ships began to discuss again, roaring excitedly. Great General, don't be scared by him. The Great Emperor is the most powerful person in the world. Unless a god descends, no one can defeat him. Don't hesitate anymore. Don't we have a trump card? Let's fight it out with him. Great General, hurry up and summon the void spirit beasts and heavenly battle puppets. Let's kill Ji Tianqing together. Hearing the roars of the many captains, Ji Tianqing immediately showed an interested smile. Void spirit beasts? Heavenly battle puppets? Great General Meng He's expression changed and his body seemed to have turned to stone. His expression became extremely ugly as he slowly turned to glare at the captains. It was obvious that he had hidden a trump card in the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace. He had wanted to pretend to surrender to lower Ji Tianqing's guard. Then he would try to lure Ji Tianqing into the Divine Palace and find a chance to launch a sneak attack. Now it seemed like his plan had been foiled before it could even take shape. It was all because of those captains who couldn't keep their cool. The more Great General Meng He thought about it, the angrier he became. If it weren't for Ji Tianqing's presence, he really wanted to pull out those gossipy captains and beat them up. But now, the void spirit beasts and heavenly battle puppets had been exposed. It was too late for him to say anything. Since that was the case, he might as well reveal his true colors and stop pretending to surrender. His bowing and trembling appearance disappeared, and he once again puffed out his chest and raised his head, revealing a sinister and cold smile. Ji Tianqing, since you've heard it, Ben Shuai won't hide it anymore. Ben Shuai wanted to play with you before, but it seems like there's no need for that now. With that, Marshal Meng He raised his right hand confidently and snapped his fingers. Come out. As soon as he said that, the heaven-punishing Divine Palace was filled with the roar of a beast. In the depths of the Divine Palace, there was a powerful divine formation, and a mysterious void spirit beast was sleeping within it. 2 martial god realm captains watched over the void spirit beast day and night. In addition, there were 34 golden armored heavenly battle puppets of different appearances hidden in another palace. Upon hearing Marshal Meng He's shout, the 2 captains immediately opened up the divine formation and released the ferocious void spirit beasts. In another palace, the 34 heavenly battle puppets woke up one after another. They opened their scarlet eyes and roared as they charged towards the plaza in front of the palace. Shwa! A pitch-black shadow streaked across the sky and landed on the plaza. This black shadow, which was hundreds of feet long and as tall as a small mountain, stomped on the golden stone floor with a loud rumble, causing the entire palace to shake. Everyone's gaze landed on this huge black beast that seemed both real and illusory at the same time. It was a huge pitch-black beast that looked like a wolf or a tiger. It had a large bloody mouth that was filled with sharp fangs. Black void divine flames kept dripping from its mouth. 2 rows of sharp knife-like bone spurs grew on its sturdy and muscular back. Void divine flames burned on its 4 thick hooves, and its long narrow tail was like a scorpion's tail that curled into a hook. Its huge eyes were purple and as dazzling as crystals. They reflected thousands of illusory lights. Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang looked at it a few more times and felt dizzy. Even their consciousness became blurry. It was obvious that the huge black beast's eyes had a special demonic power that could affect everyone's divine soul. But the strangest thing was that the huge black beast's body was sometimes bright and sometimes dark, constantly changing between reality and illusion. Ji Tianxing stared at it for a while and saw the clues. A playful smile appeared on his face. Meng He, you're quite lucky to be able to capture a void spirit realm beast without being devoured by it. Hearing this, Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang both looked puzzled and hurriedly asked, Father, what kind of species is a void spirit realm beast? Why haven't I heard of it? Father, is this beast very powerful? How does it compare to a divine beast? Ji Tianxing showed a loving expression and patiently explained, the void spirit realm beast is an ancient species. It's a special ferocious beast that's comparable to a divine beast in terms of aptitude and combat power. They've always lived in the endless void, using darkness as their cover and killing and devouring as their goal. They wander in the void and wreak havoc everywhere. Not only can they devour stars to increase their strength, but they can also kill all living things in the void. Moreover, they can travel freely in the void and have an extremely strong concealment ability. Therefore, it's difficult for ordinary true gods to catch them. Only divine gods can kill them. After that, he glanced at the void spirit realm beast in the square again and chuckled. It's a pity that the void spirit realm beast that Meng He caught is not yet an adult. According to the age of a void spirit realm beast, it's no more than 3,000 years old and it's still in its infancy. Marshal Meng He and the golden armored fleet captains listened to Ji Tianxing's eloquence. Seeing that he knew the void spirit realm beast like the back of his hand, and that he knew more about it than they did, they were all shocked. Hearing Ji Tianxing talk about the strength of the void spirit realm beast, Marshal Meng He's face was full of pride and complacency. However, when Ji Tianxing said that the beast was not yet an adult, the complacent smile on his face immediately froze. Don't be so arrogant. Even if this void spirit realm beast is still in its infancy, it has the strength of a LV3 true god and can still kill you. As he spoke, Marshal Meng He pointed to the gate of the palace behind him and sneered. What's more, Ben Shuai has 34 carefully refined heavenly battle puppets. As his voice fell, more than 30 ferocious and strange figures flew out of the gate of the palace and landed in the square one after another. Bang! 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 The heavenly battle puppets landed on the ground and made a dull sound, causing the whole square to tremble. Every heavenly battle puppet was unusually tall and majestic, and its body was full of murderous intent. Ji Tianxing looked up and saw that the 34 heavenly battle puppets were all transformed by the martial gods of various worlds in the starry sky. Those martial gods of foreign clans had strange appearances. Some looked like orcs and some looked like giants. They had all lost their minds and their bodies had been smelted together with many divine-level metals, turning into metal monsters that looked very ferocious. Among them, the tallest heavenly battle puppet reached a height of 1,000 feet, and the shortest one was at least 100 feet. Their bodies were full of weapons and their limbs and heads were full of sharp thorns and blades, revealing a terrifying murderous intent. Obviously, these heavenly battle puppets did not feel pain and did not know fear or retreat. Their combat power was very strong and they were terrifying killing machines. Chapter 2660. The Void Spirit Realm Beast stood in the middle of the square, looking down at Ji Tianxing and the other two with gloomy eyes. The 34 heavenly battle puppets spread out, surrounding the father and son trio. Outside the encirclement, Marshal Meng He and the 24 golden armored captains were also eyeing them covetously, sneering mockingly. The atmosphere in the square was very solemn and a battle was about to break out. Under the heavy encirclement, Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang both gripped the Source Stone Divine Sword tightly. Only Ji Tianxing looked indifferent, as if he was at ease without the slightest worry. He even looked at Marshal Meng He calmly and asked, "This void spirit realm beast and those ugly and inferior puppets are your so-called trump cards? If that's all you can do, I advise you to wait for 3 more days. When all the captains and warriors under your command are here, you can put up a desperate struggle. Maybe you can give me some pressure." Ji Tianxing's tone was calm and frank. He was definitely not bluffing but stating the truth. But how could Marshal Meng He and the other golden armored captains believe him? They were either roaring in anger or laughing in anger. Human scum, you're so arrogant that you're out of control. Ignorant bastard, it seems like you haven't died before. You don't know what fear is. Haha. Crazy. That guy is crazy. Surrounded by so many strong people, he can still brag without batting an eyelid. He's really arrogant to the highest level. I admire people like him who are still stubborn even in the face of death. Marshal Meng, he shook his head helplessly and mocked contemptuously. Ji Tianxing, you can be arrogant as much as you want. Anyway, you're going to die soon. If you kneel down and kowtow to Ben Shuai and beg for mercy, maybe Ben Shuai will be merciful and leave you an intact corpse. Ben Shuai can also take your corpse to the great emperor to claim credit. Ah. Hearing Marshal Meng he insult Ji Tianxing like this, Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang's eyes turned cold, and their hearts surged with anger. Their father was an omnipotent god in their hearts, a supreme heaven that no one could blaspheme. In his anger, Ji Wushuang was about to take a step forward and attack with his sword. Ji Tianxing, however, stretched out his hand and pressed on her shoulder. Smiling, he shook his head and said, "Yeah, don't be affected by the enemy's words. That's just the lowest level of psychological attack. Moreover, they were just a bunch of weak and ignorant ants. Why would a lion care about the provocation of an ant?" Ji Wushuang nodded and said solemnly, "I will remember father's teachings." Ji Tianxing nodded with a gratified expression and said, "Leave these ants to father. Later, father will leave a few alive for you to practice your swordsmanship and movement techniques." Seeing this, great General Meng He and the captains burst out laughing. Marshal Meng He was completely speechless. He pointed his sword at Ji Tianxing and shouted coldly, "Ji Tianxing, Ben Shuai's horizons have been broadened today. You are about to die, but you still don't forget to show off in front of your children. Ben Shuai decided not to kill you first, but to beat you half to death and make you kneel on the ground and beg for mercy. Ben Shuai wants your two children to see with their own eyes how incompetent and lowly you are. I want them to know that there is a painful price to pay for showing off." As his voice fell, Marshal Meng he waved the divine sword in his hand and gave the order to attack. Suddenly, the virtual spirit realm beast growled and rushed out with a flash of black light. Its figure disappeared in an instant, and in the next moment, it crossed the distance of 10 miles and rushed to Ji Tianxing's head. It raised its claws and slammed down. Ji Tianxing had been standing in the same place, with the posture of a strong man, protecting the two children behind him. When the claws of the virtual spirit realm beast fell from the sky, he raised his right hand and punched out. A condensed golden fist light, carrying a mountain-sized phantom of a dragon and elephant, instantly hit the virtual spirit realm beast. Bang! With a loud explosion, the dragon and elephant divine fist hit the head of the virtual spirit realm beast. Its sharp front claws, its bloody mouth full of fangs, and its huge head were all blasted into pieces. Pieces of flesh and blood splattered all over the sky. Ow! With a shrill scream, the virtual spirit realm beast that had lost its head flew back and crashed into the main hall of the divine palace. The 3-story palace was directly smashed into ruins, splashing dust all over the sky. The headless body of the virtual spirit realm beast fell in the ruins of the palace, twitching violently, and black blood kept spurting out of its neck. Its breath of life was quickly dissipating, and its body gradually became cold and hollow. Soon it would dissipate. One move. Ji Tianxing only used one punch to kill the legendary virtual spirit realm beast, which was comparable to a divine beast. Such a shocking scene made Marshal Meng He and the captains of the golden armored ships all widen their eyes and open their mouths in horror. Unparalleled fear surged from their hearts and spread to their whole bodies. As if they had been petrified, they couldn't even make a sound. At this moment, 15 fearless and ferocious heavenly battle puppets rushed to Ji Tianxing without any regard for their own safety. They raised their butchers' knives and halberds, releasing destructive killing moves toward Ji Tianxing, Ji Wuhan, and Ji Wushuang. Before the knives and swords arrived, an invisible pressure pressed down like a mountain, enveloping the entire square. At this critical moment, Ji Tianxing was still calm and raised his palms. Swish! He instantly unleashed 30 golden palm shadows that were wreathed in lightning, and they slashed towards the 15 heavenly battle puppets like giant blades that could split the heavens. Then there was a series of deafening muffled bangs. The 15 heavenly battle puppets were all split in half by the golden palm shadows, splashing metal fragments all over the sky. The violent impact sent them flying backward, crashing into the surrounding palaces with a loud rumble. Instantly, the 4 palaces around the square were smashed into ruins. The 15 heavenly battle puppets were also turned into piles of scrap metal, rolling and struggling in the ruins. The 5-colored divine lightning wrapped around them like chains, and they were quickly burned to ashes. At this moment, the other 19 heavenly battle puppets pounced toward Ji Tianxing without fear of death, joining forces to attack him. There was an explosion and hundreds of knives and swords lit up, covering half of the square. Ji Tianxing stood in place without moving. He raised his hands again and his 10 fingers flicked repeatedly, shooting out dozens of dazzling golden sword lights. Swish, 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 swish. The dazzling sword lights flew into the sky, destroying the attacks of the puppets. Immediately after, countless sword lights pierced through the bodies of the heavenly battle puppets, causing a series of muffled bangs and splashes of blood and debris. What was even more frightening was that none of the sword lights missed, and they all pierced the vital points of the heavenly battle puppets. The 19 heavenly battle puppets didn't die, but they fell from the sky like dumplings, smashing into the square. Before they could get up and fight again, Ji Tianxing shot out several golden chains, tying them up and putting them into his interspatial ring. Chapter 2661. There was no doubt that Ji Tianxing had deliberately left the 19 heavenly battle puppets for the 2 children to practice. At this point, the virtual spirit realm beast and the 34 heavenly battle puppets had been dealt with by Ji Tianxing. It had only taken a few breaths of time and the process was clean and tidy. It was an instant kill. Marshal Meng He and the 24 gold-armored captains felt their scalps go numb, and they felt chills all over their bodies. They looked terrified and desperate. If they had not seen the whole process with their own eyes, they would never have believed that someone could be so powerful. The trump card that Marshal Meng He had carefully prepared and hidden for many years was so weak. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Ji Tianxing walked toward the crowd at a moderate pace, and light footsteps sounded under his feet. Marshal Meng He and the gold-armored captains were suddenly awakened, and they all looked fearful. Everyone wanted to retreat and several gold-armored captains could not help but retreat. Ji Tianxing. The warriors of the Heaven Punisher tribe are not cowards who are afraid of death. If you want to bathe the celestial palace in blood, we will fight you to the end and destroy everything. Marshal Meng He was nervous, but his voice was as loud as a bell as he roared. Not only Ji Tianxing and his 2 sons, but even the 20 gold-armored captains could tell that he was not confident enough. Ji Tianxing smiled disapprovingly. Destroy everything? You guys aren't qualified. As his voice fell, he suddenly raised his right hand and pointed to the sky with a sword sign. Sword rain. As he shouted, thousands of dazzling golden sword lights lit up in the sky and fell like raindrops. Swish, 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 swish. The thousands of sword lights formed a sword net and smashed down, covering Marshal Meng He and the 24 gold-armored captains. The dazzling golden sword lights danced and shuttled back and forth like meteors and lightning, killing everyone. The entire square was dazzling with golden light. The sword lights were extremely fast and fierce and no one could avoid them. In the blink of an eye, Marshal Meng He and the 24 gold-armored captains had been hit by more than a dozen swords. Bang, bang, bang. Muffled sounds continued to burst out, and one after another, blood-curdling screams resounded in the sky. Puffs of purple blood burst out and clumps of flesh and blood fell on the square. Ji Tianxing just stood there with his hands clasped behind his back, watching expressionlessly. The thousands of dazzling golden sword lights seemed to have a life of their own as they crazily attacked the Heaven Punishers. After a short span of 4 breaths, one of the captains could not hold on any longer and was killed by the sword light. His tall and sturdy body was pierced with hundreds of bloody holes by the sword light, like a broken sieve. Even after he fell to the ground, the sword light did not stop strangling him. Soon his body was minced into pieces. Then the second, the third, the fourth. Many captains fell one after another. Every one of the captains who fell to the ground had a miserable ending. Most of them died without a complete corpse. Such a tragic scene made the heavily wounded and stubborn captains feel endless fear and despair. Soon 20 breaths had passed. The dazzling golden sword lights that filled the sky finally ran out of energy and gradually dissipated. 21 of the 24 captains had been killed. Only 3 captains were lucky enough to survive, but they were also covered in wounds. Their bodies were like honeycombs and blood was gushing out. Marshal Meng He was of course still alive, but he was heavily injured and looked miserable. As soon as the sword light dissipated, he led the 3 heavily wounded captains out of the square and fled out of the Heaven Punisher Palace. He had forgotten all about the bravery and integrity of the Heaven Punisher race. He did not even dare to think about the billions of resources in the Heaven Punisher Palace. He only wanted to escape from this place and get rid of the terrifying demon Zhi Tianxing. In order to escape successfully, he and the 3 captains split up and fled. However, long before the battle began, Zhi Tianxing had already made arrangements. When he saw Marshal Meng He and the others flee, he still stood there calmly and had no intention of chasing after them. This was because the White Dragon and the 4 divine beasts were guarding the perimeter of the Heaven Punisher Palace. During this period of time, they had already killed hundreds of black-armored guards who had tried to escape. When Marshal Meng He and the 3 captains desperately fled to the edge of the Heaven Punisher Palace, they were immediately stopped by the White Dragon. Bang! 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 After a series of earth-shattering explosions, the 3 captains were killed on the spot. Marshal Meng He was also captured by the White Dragon. He was held by the neck and brought back to the square. Then he was thrown in front of Zhi Tianxing. Plop! Marshal Meng He, who was covered in blood, smashed into the golden stone ground. His body bent over as he fell to the ground at Zhi Tianxing's feet. Zhi Tianxing looked down at him from above and said expressionlessly, "I gave you a chance to gather your fleets and fight 3 days later. Unfortunately, you rejected me and insisted on seeking death. Now you no longer have a chance. There is no need to beg for mercy. I want to ask you a few questions. However, you are stubborn and would rather die than submit. I am sure you will not cooperate with me. Therefore, I do not want to waste my time with you. I will search your soul directly." As he spoke, Zhi Tianxing raised his right hand and used the soul-searching divine skill. A mysterious and cold black light surged out from his palm. Marshal Meng He was instantly filled with fear. His entire body started to tremble. At this moment he finally understood how terrifying Zhi Tianxing's strength and methods were. He suddenly remembered something. Previously, Zhi Tianxing knew that he had sent a message to the Heaven Punisher Great Emperor, but he did not stop him. After that, Zhi Tianxing said that even if the Heaven Punisher Great Emperor knew about it, it would be useless. He would not come to the Purple Cloud planet to save him. Moreover, if the Heaven Punisher Great Emperor knew that Zhi Tianxing was here, he would not dare to come. At that time, Marshal Meng He did not understand what Zhi Tianxing was trying to do. Now he finally understood. He was completely convinced and admitted defeat. This was because he knew that Zhi Tianxing's strength and methods were even more terrifying than the Heaven Punisher Great Emperor's. When he thought of this, he had no choice but to give up his dignity and integrity. He quickly shouted, "No. Zhi Tianxing, as long as you ask, I will answer all your questions truthfully." His voice was low and hoarse. His heart was filled with humiliation and despair. Zhi Tianxing slowly withdrew his right hand and asked with interest, "Oh? I thought you would rather die than obey me? Why are you so sensible now?" Marshal Meng He did not answer. Instead he said in a low voice, "I know that I will definitely die today. I am not asking you to let me go. I only hope that after I answer your questions, you will give me a quick death. We are both true gods, deities who are above all living beings. I hope that you will give me some face and not bring shame to your divine might." Zhi Tianxing nodded with a smile and said, "All right." Then he asked, "Where is the Heaven Punisher's base? How far is it from the Purple Cloud planet?" Marshal Meng He answered without hesitation, "Our base is in the celestial sphere, the Heaven Punisher planet. 900 years ago, we took control of the entire celestial sphere and renamed it the Heaven Punisher planet. From the Purple Cloud planet to the Heaven Punisher planet, we have to pass through 3 major planets. Even a heavenly god-level battleship that can perform a space jump will take 18 years to arrive." That you're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.